Hey everybody, happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon. Welcome to another episode of TechStrong TV. Today is Thursday, March 11th, and we got lots in store for you today on TechStrong TV. Before we get things rolling, I want to let you know about an event coming up on March 24th. It's called the Secure Coding Virtual Summit. Pretty much everything you need to know about how to code security or about code security in general. So it's a great conference. Definitely worth checking out if you are interested in code security, and really, who's not? You can go to securecoding.com to find out more about it and to register. But on today's TechStrong TV, we have got some great conversations. We're going to get things started with a conversation that Alan has with Eric Johnson, who is the Executive Vice President of Engineering over GitLab. And he and Alan talk about GitLab is using its own experience with CI/CD as an example, and really they talk about what works in CI/CD and what doesn't. So it's a great insight from a company that's knee-deep in CI/CD, and a great conversation. After that, Alan talks to Kevin Simzer, who is the COO of Trend Micro, and Lori Smith, who's the Senior Product Marketing Manager over at Trend Micro. They talk about Vision 1, which is a new platform that Trend Micro has just released that provides visibility and response. It's an interesting technology, and Kevin and Lori's kind of parse it out for Alan, what it does, what it means for the user, and all that good stuff. So great conversation there as well. After that, we have the third in our lineup of conversations with members of the Value Stream Management Consortium, the recently formed Value Stream Management Consortium. This conversation is with RJ Janendra, who is the General Manager and VP of Emerging Business at ServiceNow. He discusses why ServiceNow got involved in the Value Stream Management Consortium, what it means to the industry at large, and how value stream management can be of benefit to organizations. It's a really interesting conversation, and as I said, it is the third in a series of conversations that we have with the VSM Consortium members. Great stuff, totally worth checking out. After that, we have part 3 of our 3-part Haunted Hacker podcast, hosted by Mike Jones. As always, he continues his conversation with David Lee, who is AKA DC Cybersec. They talk about InfoSec security, cybersecurity, and all that good stuff. So another one worth checking out if you got the time. After that, we have our Something Old segment, which is from the most recent Predict 2021 Virtual Summit. This one is a presentation by Jen Grant, who is the CEO of Appify. And the title of her conversation, her discussion, is Software's Not Living Up to Its Cloud-Enabled Promise. This is a really, really interesting one. We all know that while the cloud offers many advantages over traditional on-premises deployments of monolithic ERP systems, there have been 2 major issues that SaaS companies have not addressed. So in her talk, Jen discusses how cloud applications have created silos and how there is no one-size-fits-all approach. It's a great, great presentation, and I highly encourage you to watch this one. After Jen's conversation, I come back and I do have the news headlines for you, as I always do. And then I have a great conversation with Matt Groves from Couchbase. They just recently put out their 2020 Tech Lead Survey, which shows that while developers are revolutionizing digital transformation efforts throughout the COVID-19 crisis, they're still having some issues. And just the very fact that they have been so productive means that it really can't be sustainable, unfortunately. So the survey, which actually asked 450 senior IT decision makers worldwide, ended up exposing some of the stressors for development teams which, if they're not mitigated, could easily result in fatigue and burnout. And that is certainly something that everybody is watching out for with the pandemic and the increase in productivity that obviously could have some very dire consequences down the road if we're all not careful. So it's a great conversation that Matt and I have about developer productivity in COVID-19 and beyond, and definitely one you want to check out if you have any inclination that maybe some of your developers are experiencing burnout. Give this conversation a listen for sure. After that, I talk with Gordon Lawson, who is the president of Rangeforce. He and I talk about Rangeforce's participation in a program called Black Girls Hack. And it's hashtag BGH. It's happening in the DC area. And he and I have a very frank conversation about how programs like this and others can help promote diversity and inclusion in cybersecurity. This is an important conversation, and it really illuminates what's been happening as more organizations are recognizing that we need more women, we need more underrepresented communities in the cybersecurity and in IT in general. And I applaud Rangeforce for being a part of this, and also want to let you guys know that our company actually just started funding 2 scholarships for underrepresented folks to apply for a full scholarship to Boca Code, which is a local South Florida coding school. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can just go to mediaops.com, and there's lots of information on there about it. But yeah, it's called Engineering the Future, I think it is, or something like that. I can't remember. But it's a great scholarship. And Rangeforce is also another great example of how organizations are stepping up to make sure that we do have more women and other underrepresented communities involved in IT and cyber. All right, after that, I have the webinar's preview for you, and then Mitch Ashley comes on with his Analyst Corner. Mitch is joined by Glenn Weinstein, who is the Chief Customer Officer of Twilio. They talk about the results of Twilio's second annual State of Customer Engagement Report. This was initiated at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic last year in 2020, obviously, and the report validates and illuminates a number of digital transformation topics that we've all been talking about, the most important of which, arguably, is how software teams have demonstrated their ability to respond and to support the business in 2020 and beyond. So it's a fascinating look also at how digital platforms, programmable platforms, tools, and talented developers are enabling businesses of all sizes to compete in the digital economy. It's a great conversation, so check it out. After that, we have a conversation with Mike Vizard in his The View with Vizard segment. He talks with Varun Badwar, who is the Senior Vice President for Product at Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks, and Edan Tendler, who's co-founder of Bridge Crew. They explain why scanning infrastructure as code is essential following the closing of recent acquisition. So, great conversation the three of them have. Scanning code is absolutely integral and necessary in today's environment in general, especially as more organizations, find code in different places. You want to make sure that it's secure. So Palo Alto Networks and Bridge Crew have a lot of information and a lot of purview into code scanning. So they offer up their advice and expertise on the topic. So great conversation. All right, that's it for today's TechStrong TV lineup. We've got lots coming up, and we will get things started right after this commercial message. All right, everybody, welcome back. First up, we have a conversation between Alan Schimmel and Eric Johnson, who's the Executive Vice President of Engineering at GitLab. You talk about CI/CD using GitLab's own experiences as an example, and it's a great insight into what works and what doesn't when it comes to CI/CD. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another TechStrong TV segment. My guest right now is Eric Johnson, CTO from GitLab. Eric, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you on here. So Eric, GitLab is no stranger to our audience. We're lucky to have, we have Brendan O'Leary, who gives us our monthly GitLab update, right after the 22nd of every month about what the new release has. We, regularly talk to the GitLab folks, Sid from Sid on down. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about, GitLab does so many things out of the box, right? Unorthodox, differently. I wanted to focus in today a little bit, if you don't mind, about how GitLab does development, right? There's an open source community aspect to it, yes, but there's a lot of internal development, like every other product company and software company in developing your software. We talk about agile and lean and whatever, but you guys do it your own way. Give us a little insight if you can, Eric.
Sure, yeah, and I think agile is such a broad concept. You always have to ask someone, what flavor of agile are you running? And so I've been at GitLab 3.5 years. I run 6 departments, development being one of them. We also have infrastructure, security, support, UX, and quality, and at this point, I think we've sort of cracked an interesting formula to how to run agile teams. So to compare and contrast, if you're running sort of the Scrum playbook, you're probably running those standardized ceremonies with the kickoff meeting and the retrospection meeting, and the big one is like the backlog refinement meeting, or sometimes it's called the backlog grooming meeting, although the community is moving away from that term grooming. And a lot of it has to do with estimation, because you're responsible for not just developing your product, but making sure you're doing a high volume of work that you're giving back to users and customers. And we get a lot of pressure for how much are we doing? And a lot of organizations have a lot of pressure on predictability of like, when is that one feature that I need arriving? And we have a sort of a novel approach to this. So we actually do away with those upfront estimation meetings. So if you're following the Scrum playbook, it's probably like a 4-hour minimum meeting every 2 weeks, let's say, if you're doing a standard 2-week sprint, where your product manager and your team are gathering and kind of refining the backlog and throwing up, Fibonacci points, or some people use zoo animals or something like that. Say this feature is an elephant, this feature is a mouse, or something like that. And then you track that over time. You see how much, when you close the sprint, how many feature points or story points or whatever did we do. And there's a couple of problems with that. One is those meetings take up a lot of time. It's probably at least a full day out of that 2-week sprint that you're spending in meetings discussing stuff. And that has some value, but it also needs to pay itself back in terms of feature development at the end of it. But also, I think the open secret that every engineer knows is that it's just an inaccurate process. It's incredibly difficult to get your estimates to the point where you really have anything more than like plus or minus 100% on any, like, huge error bars on any kind of estimate. And so our approach is we don't do those meetings, so we get that time back as development. We just basically track the volume of work that is moving in any snapshot of time. So we don't necessarily have to do a 2-week sprint. We do a monthly release for our self-managed product. We do continuous delivery to gitlab.com. We could take any slice of time and say, well, how many units of work did we deliver over that time frame? We tend to look at months because that's just convenient. And then we track that over time. We try to make efficiencies and process changes and see if that goes up or down. And so I think we're that much more efficient. You see that when you lead our release posts. I mean, that's probably why you have to talk to Brendan once a month, is because our release posts are pages and pages long. I think we had 60 items in 13.9 that we felt were worthy enough to put a blurb and a screenshot next to it. It's a lot of stuff that we're shipping.
Yeah.
But it also begs the question of, the point of sizing and estimation is so you know the size of this stuff. So how the heck does GitLab know what we're delivering if we're not tracking this stuff? And the answer is one of our core values is iteration. And so it's sort of a meta strategy where GitLab doesn't make big mistakes because we don't do big things. We do small things. Now we can make small mistakes, but you can recover from small mistakes very easily. Most of the things we do are good. And so we put pressure on engineers, also PMs, to just cut scope and make everything as small as it possibly can be. And turns out there's a lower limit on complexity. So we do this, which is sort of a cultural thing, to just cut scope, make it minimum viable. And then we look at our merge requests. That's our unit of work, is a merge request, because that's code that an engineer is actually writing. And they all end up being about 70 lines. The diff is 70 lines. It's sort of magical, where you just make things small. You say, just make sure it has some value. And then sure enough, they all end up being somewhat uniform in size. So without estimation, we can basically guarantee that most of these things are about the same size. And then it makes it pretty, surprisingly accurate to track it over time and give us confidence that we're getting a really good measurement. And sure enough, we make some of those process changes, like we alter our definition of done, or we change something about our continuous delivery system or process, and we see the uptick or the downtick in our productivity. And it's addictive, because I lived in that world of heavy on estimation and whatnot. And it takes a lot of time, and it's frustrating because it hardly ever feels like it's working. And we get all that time back. And I would be hard pressed to ever go to another company for many reasons, but mainly because I wouldn't want to go back into that kind of estimation framework. Now, one of the downsides, potentially, if you're thinking this is interesting and I'm an engineering leader and I would want to do this, is predictability. And so the thing about making things small and being very iterative, it goes in hand with, well, we have to kind of stand back and not really put too much pressure on the idea that this feature needs to be delivered this exact week or this exact month. Because the downside is when you over-optimize for predictability, it's really impossible, in retrospect, looking back at my career, talking to the engineering leaders, to provide predictability as a service back to your stakeholders without just committing to less. The way you guarantee you can deliver that one important thing is by, at the end of the day, doing only that important thing and no other work. And it's sort of unavoidable. And we've seen that in our metrics. There was a time in the past where our stakeholders said we want more predictability. So we asked our managers to do that. They achieved 100% predictability, and productivity went down in concert to that. So we said, okay, the right thing to do here is we're just going to step back, not ask anybody to optimize for predictability, and just trust that the volume of work being delivered is so high, that thing we care about, it's going to arrive. And it might be plus or minus one release, but it's definitely going to arrive. And it would be counterproductive to put the stress, say, no, it has to be 13.9 or whatever the sort of releases. So what I'm getting at is that you can't really do this without your stakeholders being on board. You have to make sure your CEO or whomever it is comfortable kind of doing what feels a little bit unnatural. And occasionally there's customers that might want a feature, or the worst case scenario you can get in is you got a revenue recognition problem based on a feature being delivered. Those things happen. But if you can get people to back off on that, I think you'll be able to show them of look, we're going to, over a long span of time, maybe deliver twice as much work with the same team. And that's not, I know that sounds hyperbolic, but that's not an exaggeration. We've seen that in our metrics.
You know what? I get it, because I unfortunately have been on the other side of that, where we did have a big customer who basically they weren't re-upping if we didn't have this feature by X date, right? And so, this is pre-DevOps, right? We're doing twice a year releases. Our whole 6 months release cycle is geared towards this one feature, which we did a really lousy job of implementing, I might add. And so 2 weeks before drop dead date, we're scrambling, virtually rewriting it because it just don't work. And, Then, of course, the company we sold it to, I won't mention names, Lehman, they went out of business shortly thereafter in the financial crisis. And we literally wasted 6 months or more, developing that. It was for them. And, we never really recovered from that either, Eric. I'll tell you, there's lessons to be learned there for sure around that.
Yeah. And it's a great segue into like continuous delivery, because in that world and in the start of my career, it was definitely the case for most companies doing like twice annual releases, and the really fast agile ones were doing quarterly releases. And that was
if you were agile, you would do it quarterly. Wow.
Yeah.
And look where we are now.
Yeah. And so now it's not about predictability for that one release. It's hopefully it could take some of that pressure off predictability if you're going to release every time a day or 30 times a day, whatever.
Well, that does help. You're right.
Yeah. Whatever you're, and I say like continuous delivery is sometimes confused with continuous deployment, where people assume of like, oh, you're just think the test pass, you're just shipping that. It's like, well, no, that's a business decision. Continuous delivery means your release is proven to be deployable, but you don't have to release it to production. That's a business decision. But it's important to take it up to that point in as automated a way as you can, and then be deploying with confidence. And then you get all those benefits of iteration. I mean, you can kind of, in a weird way, to go back in time, you can guarantee that customer that feature will be released by that 6-month date. But in reality, it would be maybe in the first month, maybe in the second month, or something like that. It's not pressurized by that 6-month time frame, because it's the only one you get for 6 months.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with it. And I will tell you, you mentioned Brendan and the monthly releases. I stopped bringing him on every month to do, because there is a lot there. I make him record his own now. Yeah. And I think it's called The Lab. We offer it once a month, and it's up on our TechStrong TV and Digital Anarchist site. Brendan does them on his own. I couldn't keep up with him. It was too much, Eric, every month.
Yeah, but I read the post. I was in the kickoff meeting for 13.9. I prepped before talking with you, and my intent was to read the whole post again. And I only got halfway through it. It was so long.
This is why I let Brendan do it. He knows it better than anyone, and he can take his time doing it. But to your point, look, if you're going to be plus or minus one release, and that release is a month away, man, that takes a lot of pressure off. It takes a lot of pressure off, knowing that the most you're going to miss is by 1 month. Let's talk about CI/CD though. The CI/CD world that we see today is very different than the CI/CD world even 3.5 years ago when you joined GitLab.
Sure.
Right? 3.5 years ago, it was more CI than CD. Let's face it.
Sure. Yeah.
And quite frankly, the other thing is, for the last 5 years, CI/CD, people think it's one word. The slash in the middle is almost gone. It's CI/CD.
Yeah.
But there was a time where CI was CI and CD was CD, right? And they weren't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we're a little bit coming back to that now, where, a lot of CI takes place in Git. You want to call it GitOps or whatever you want to call it, right? And then via in a Kubernetes kind of environment is a very different delivery and deployment than it is in a non-Kubernetes kind of environment. And it makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and even within that, regardless if you're doing traditional VMs or a containerized environment, you may or may not choose to do things like blue-green deploys, and that's more of a philosophical thing than a technical thing. And so the tools that you're choosing and that we try to enable users of GitLab is that choice to kind of like the one true way to deploy really hasn't been developed yet. It probably never will be, but for now we're taking the approach of like support what the users want to do. And there's very strong cases why in perpetuity it'll never converge on one philosophy, because there's always new data stores coming up, and that makes it tricky to sort of deploy. Or mobile apps are usually gated by an app store, and that's fundamentally different than a web application that's being deployed. And so the CD looks different. there. So you got to support broad choice, I think.
Absolutely. I don't know if you were following yesterday, Eric. I saw IBM release something called Cloud Satellite. And I know GitLab has been working closely with IBM on a bunch of initiatives, from mainframe to cloud packs and stuff like that. But this Cloud Satellite took the idea of portability, which used to be one of the key principles of cloud, right? Elasticity, portability, burstability, all the abilities. But the idea behind portability is I could put it on this cloud today, that cloud tomorrow, have a piece of it on-prem, have a piece of it in private cloud, a piece of it in public cloud, maybe a piece of it on the edge, which is kind of the new frontier.
Mm-hmm.
In your role as CTO at GitLab, how do you view this portability? It's not a problem, but how do you view the portability feature?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity. I mean, the first big project I did when I joined GitLab was the company had already committed to moving from one big infrastructure provider to another. So it was kind of the lift and shift. So I've got firsthand experience doing that. It happens for a bunch of different reasons. I mean, there's cost reasons is a big one. I mean, I went to, I think, GCP Next a few years ago, and at least a third of the talks were about managing your infrastructure cost. And all of them basically said, like, you've got to start using tags and labeling all these VMs so you can categorize them and understand where all the money's going. And identifying, like, a big problem was identifying orphan machines, like VMs you spun up, you're renting, paying for, and they're detached.
And you don't use, and you haven't used in,
And the meter is just running on that stuff. And big companies are spending millions of dollars on this stuff, and you can support having a whole team doing little else but going around finding them and turning them off. And really that's one of those things you would hope would just work, and you'd be able to automize in a more automated sort of way. So I think the hope from the sort of the buy side of this is that in the future you'd be able to support multiple clouds. Almost you could arbitrage the cost across them. And then I think the clouds themselves, they're looking to obviously build beyond the raw kind of building blocks like compute and storage and some of the networking stuff. And you see them adding these sort of more value-added services like a natural language processing thing, or like TPUs, and in the case of GCP, like TensorFlow processors to do your machine learning stuff to attract you to one versus the other. So the commoditized stuff kind of works the same, and it makes it very easy to slide between AWS, GCP, Azure, whatever it might be. And then they're all developing these more specialized things, and I think they're hoping to kind of get you hooked on one of those things for your business, and then it makes you less portable. So a really important decision for a lot of people is, do you want to, like, if I'm developing a product, is portability or using multiple cloud important? Well, then you're going to have to use more of the building blocks, more of that raw kind of compute and storage and bandwidth. Or if I'm don't want to optimize for that, then I'm willing to kind of go up in the stack, so to speak, and use some more of the really opinionated services. And maybe that allows you to iterate faster or outcompete your competitors or whatever it might be.
Very cool stuff. Eric, we're probably over time already. I apologize. I didn't realize the time. I apologize. But hey, can you come back and we can continue this conversation?
Sure. Yeah, anytime.
Love to have you. Eric Johnson, CTO at GitLab here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with another guest. Thank you.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, next up, Alan talks to Kevin Simzer, COO, and Lori Smith, product marketing over at Trend Micro. They talk about Trend Micro Vision One, which is a platform providing visibility and response. Great conversation. Let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another segment of TechStrong TV. I'm really happy to be joined for this segment by two folks from Trend Micro. Let me introduce you to Kevin Simzer, Kevin's been with us before on the show. Kevin, welcome back to TechStrong TV.
Oh, thanks, Alan.
And joining Kevin and I, we're very lucky to have Lori Smith with us today. Hi Lori, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Very glad to be here, thanks.
Why don't we start? Well, I said you were both from Trend Micro, but Lori, why don't we ask you to go first? Give us a little bit of your background, what you do at Trend Micro.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm part of the global product marketing team at Trend. And so responsible for the product marketing for Trend Micro Vision One. And so the XDR capabilities of the company. So been really exciting times as we've been building that out. So working with many teams across the company on our go-to-market strategy for that.
Excellent. And Kevin, why don't you just, refresh our audience? What do you do at Trend?
Sure. And I'm lucky to have Lori here with me. She will make sure that all the correct facts get articulated here. My name is Kevin Simzer, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Trend Micro globally. My job is we're trying to stop the bad guys. And for us, the bad guys are the hackers. And I try to stay out in front of that as much as possible. I lead the field organization. So anything that touches a customer, I tend to get involved with.
Absolutely. And God knows we need it. There's so much, it just never ends, right? I've been in security 20 years and I was desensitized to the consistent barrage of, this one got hacked, these millions records were stolen, this country is doing something, this activist group is doing something. It just never ends. But Lori, you met.
It really doesn't, Alan. And I'm an old guy like you, so I've been in cybersecurity for 30 years, and it's been a fun journey. But the bad guys are getting much more organized. They're also working from home, I think, and have more time on their hands with the global pandemic. And we've seen a substantial rise, like everybody's reporting, in particular in ransomware. And nothing pains us more to see, some company hit with that. So we're trying to get our platforms in front of as many prospects and our customers as possible.
Absolutely. You speaking of that, I just got late last week from our insurance broker, our yearly kind of basic liability insurance up for renewal. And for the first time, they made a big push for us to get cyber insurance that supposedly covers ransomware. Now, of course, when you're talking about cyber insurance and ransomware coverage, the devil's in the details. I'm not out here advocating it. I'm not telling you to get it, don't get it. Consult your lawyers and your own insurance people. We don't want any lawsuits. But, the fact that mainstream insurance carriers and insurance brokers are, recommending it shows you just how mainstream this problem is, right? This isn't just for the techies or something like that. But Lori, you mentioned you are product manager for, what did we call it? Trend Micro
Vision One.
Tell our audience, what exactly is that?
Yeah, so Trend Micro Vision One, essentially it's our answer to trying to make our security analysts' lives easier and better equipped against the bad guys we were talking about. So Vision One is our platform on which our extended detection and response, our XDR capabilities are built. And essentially, we introduced our XDR capabilities and strategy back in 2019, and we've had this platform introduced last year. We've been expanding and deepening the XDR capabilities ever since. And, one of the things about the platform is, the power of it and the extensibility of it. And so, we've really seen opportunity to expand not only from a depth of XDR capability, but also, extend it to offer added value and benefits and serve new use cases within and beyond XDR. And so Trend Micro Vision 1 is really about, the ability to, over time, build a fully integrated threat defense platform for security teams.
I'm glad Lori mentioned the threat defense platform. In my view, I'm obviously a bit biased, Alan, that, but it's the most advanced threat defense platform on the planet. We've been continuing to evolve it, and our most current release that we just issued, we're super, super excited about it. And fundamentally, the most important element of that is what Lori mentioned, XDR. We believe you need telemetry from multiple sources, not just the endpoints, in order to truly, be quick at finding those incidents and being able to respond. So we have telemetry from endpoints, from servers, from email, from the network. We can vacuum up all of that and really give a lot of power and capability in the hands of those SOC analysts. So we're super excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
That is exciting. What about sort of threat intel feeds and stuff in there as well? Anything with that, or is it just what's local on the customer's network?
Lori can add. She'll have a more accurate answer. For me, it's sort of pre-populated with all the threat intelligence that we have, right. And that's powerful on its own. We have over 350,000 SaaS customers alone. So we have, we're doing business in 60 different countries. So we have a very big global footprint today with hundreds of thousands of customers around the globe where we vacuum up a lot of telemetry ourselves. We do have the ability to ingest, other logs from some systems, and that helps to complement what we already provide. And then fundamentally, it's really geared towards vacuuming up the telemetry from an enterprise environment, so their own environment. So we learn a lot from their own environment. But Lori, you've got a clearer picture. What would you add?
Yeah, no, I think what you said was accurate. So really, the platform's about, pulling in the activity data, that full telemetry from the different sensors or protection points in the environment, and then applying, advanced security analytics and our threat detection, threat intelligence on top of that. And so, that threat intelligence not only, does it feeds the analytical models and the detection rules, and then as Kevin said, within the platform, we have our own feeds and third-party threat intelligence feeds that can, when there's a detection, supplement the information on the type of attack and threat actors and all of that.
Excellent stuff. So, I think a lot of people, believe it or not, they take their security for granted these days. Talking about endpoint protection now. Ransomware scares the heck out of people. Not enough to stop them from clicking on links they shouldn't click on in their mail, but it's another story. But a lot of people take their endpoint security for granted. For too many, it comes with the computer when you buy it, right? You get 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever. And thank God we've made it. And maybe that, the security industry is a victim of its own success. It updates automatically, it scans automatically, it quarantines automatically, it, alerts you automatically. Maybe making it automatic is one of the reasons why we take it for granted. But I think we lose sight into just how complex it is today to, to have this kind of platform available, to have this kind of telemetry behind it, right? Making that all happen. It's complex, doesn't even begin to, explain it, to tell you the truth, right? There's so many moving parts.
And, honestly, sometimes when I'm, invited to a conference and asked to speak and whatnot, people ask me the open-ended question, what should I be looking at? What should I be looking at? And I suppose it's the perfect opportunity for me to give some kind of a sales pitch around why Trend Micro is the greatest. But honestly, where I always start and what I actually see most, and I'm lucky I get to talk to a lot of CISOs, I get to talk to a lot of security people. And, in a lot of cases, it's the basics, what you're alluding to, Alan, that people have just forgotten, right? We see, not enough time being spent on educating their constituents. We see not enough time being spent on what I would call basic hygiene, making sure your backups are done, making sure that the current security controls you have in place are updated and patched and current, just some of the basics that those things are not getting done. So I always start there, make sure that is done. Then once you get that done, we can definitely step in and help you with much, much more sophisticated capabilities in order to actually help you, earlier detect, problems that are going on and respond to those with this advanced threat detection platform that we have.
Absolutely. Lori, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to do some of the heavy lifting here. For folks at home who are interested in this, they are at home. They're not in the office. You used to say when you meant folks at home, you meant not people working. But today, folks at home mean people who are working. For the folks at home who are interested, how do they get information on this? How might they be able to install, use it, check it out?
Yeah, so I would say really visit Trend Micro and trendmicro.com, and we've got a lot of resources on the website that really explains the value proposition and then can take them through the steps to experience it themselves.
Is there a sort of a trial period or something that people could check out?
Yeah, so we've got some, complimentary offers in place so that we can do some trials so that they can have the experience of the platform and understand. Because you're right, a lot of it is seeing is believing and understanding the potential and the benefit of the platform. Lots of times you need to be in it.
Oh, agreed. No doubt about that. Kevin, look, like you, I speak to a lot of people too. What are you hearing in terms of, we're now a year into this work from home COVID situation. Hopefully by this summer, maybe early fall, we start to see some movement, some changes, positive changes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, from my mouth to God's ears. But what are you hearing around? I mean, the ransomware is terrible, the ransomware situation. What else are you hearing around security and stuff that you could share with the audience?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Our research analysts are definitely saying that ransomware is not going to let up. So, the rise that we saw last year is going to continue. I see a lot of people that are looking to move, infrastructure that they used to run themselves. They're doing the transformation and migrating that to the cloud. So I think those are big steps because now all of a sudden, that the platform is always current. It's always up to date. It's always got the latest rules and machine learning algorithms running. So I think that's a huge, huge step. So we definitely see that is going to be continuing this year. And ultimately, we think that this is going to be the year where, people that are talking about XDR it truly starts to lift off, where people have mostly been vacuuming up telemetry from one place. But I think we're going to see it start to expand where they're going to care about the telemetry from their email environment. We're continuing to see basic email as still the number one vulnerability spot in somebody's network, somebody's infrastructure. So, we're going to see that continue to be very, very topical.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lori.
No, I was just going to say, I was add to that. So with the COVID pandemic, organizations are now facing this new reality of remote workforce that are sitting outside their firewalls. So it has really made the SaaS migration a priority and more important than ever. And so both from an operational perspective and from a protection. So as Kevin said, the idea of the SaaS solutions being up to date and with the most current, and then SaaS eliminates, the need for organizations to expand their VPN capacity, which can be very costly when they're doing it at scale. So an infrastructure itself is a growing attack point, so less servers to protect and all of that. So we're seeing a good shift in sort of that SaaS mentality for maybe what used to be more sort of the laggards or the laggards as a result.
Absolutely. It's funny, we do a lot of virtual events here at Media Ops. I have one coming up called the Cybersecurity Summit 2021. And so one of the speakers is my friend Ira Winkler. Kevin, you've probably met Ira over the years. Yeah, we all have. It comes with age in the territory. But his new book is called You Can't Stop Stupid, right? Which is, because for too long we've heard that, it's the weak link is the person behind the keyboard, right? And so what can we do to kind of make that not the weak link anymore? And I'm looking forward to Ira's talk on it, because it is, email is still the killer app of the internet, right? No matter what we talk about with Slack and messaging and all of that, people still rely on email. It's how business gets done. But it's also still the chink in the armor, right? It's still the vector of so much.
But it's getting pretty savvy now. It can fool many people. It's very sophisticated now. For sure. Guys, we're about out of time. I want to thank you for joining us here on TechStrong TV. Good luck with the new launch here, and we'll have people check it out at trendmicro.com. Kevin, Lori, come back and join us soon.
Looking forward to it, Alan. Thanks always for the opportunity.
Oh, it's our pleasure always, man. All right. Kevin Simser, COO, Trend Micro. Lori Smith, Product Marketing, Trend Micro, here on TechStrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by Media Ops Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, in our next segment coming up, it's our latest in our Value Stream Management Consortium conversation. This one is with RJ Janendra, who's the GM and VP of Emerging Business at ServiceNow. He talks about his company's participation in the Value Stream Management Consortium, what it means to the market in general. Let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another segment here for TechStrong TV. My guest this segment is RJ Janendra. RJ, of course, is a gem with ServiceNow. RJ, welcome back to TechStrong TV.
Hey, Alan, thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
It's a pleasure, as always, to have you on. RJ, I gave short shrift to your title. Why don't you do a better job than me and explain to the people what's your position at ServiceNow? What are you doing?
So I've been here at ServiceNow for the last 2.5 years as the general manager for our DevOps and IT business management businesses. It's been a fun ride to see these businesses grow and thrive at ServiceNow.
Sure. Well, ServiceNow itself is growing and thriving, so I imagine it's a good time, and it's growing and thriving doesn't come without hard work, of course, though, right? And good ideas and good people and execution. So, kudos to you and the whole ServiceNow team. I think also, quite frankly, is in a relatively short time, ServiceNow has shown that they're serious about the DevOps market and what people are doing and how DevOps has kind of fundamentally taken root in so many organizations in terms of how they deploy and operate and develop software. So, again, good job there. Of course, we're going to talk about something related to that today, and that is the launch of this Value Stream Management Consortium, right? vsmconsortium.org. And RJ, as we spoke off camera, we've interviewed a few of the founding board members, and excited with what's going on. What I'd like to ask you is, why ServiceNow? Why was ServiceNow inclined to become one of the founding members here with everything that goes with that? I mean, there's obligations and responsibilities and money involved. Why ServiceNow? What do you think you guys bring to the table here?
Yeah, Alan, so that's a great question. And so first of all, we're really privileged and honored to be part of this Value Stream Management Consortium as we get it off the ground. And from a ServiceNow perspective, if you think about what we're trying to accomplish, right? At the end of the day, when we look at things like DevOps, the goal of all of these is for our customers to be able to deliver better outcomes, right? Whether it's a better digital experience for their customers or for their employees. And so to be able to do that, you have to really look at the end-to-end flow, right from the ideation all the way through delivery and where users are getting value and also providing feedback, right? And so if you think of ServiceNow, we really have that platform where we have multiple solutions starting from customer service workflows all the way through within IT and employee experience. And one of the beautiful things about ServiceNow is all of these solutions are built on that single platform. So we have a single data model, a single platform, and all the data lives together inside of ServiceNow. And the approach that we take from a DevOps perspective is, we don't advocate or tell teams what technology to use, right? Teams love their tools. They like to use different kinds of technology. But the thing that we do with ServiceNow is we bring all the data into our single platform where we can correlate and tie it all together with the goal of then being able to provide the information that customers need in terms of, are they being able to deliver value quickly, right? Or what are the bottlenecks that they may be experiencing? And because we do have a platform that has workflow as a core capability, they can then add in any of the necessary automation and workflows that are needed to make a seamless end-to-end process. And so that really aligns with what the value stream management is all about. It's an emerging term in the industry. I recall DevOps back in 2009, 2010, and I think value stream is in the early phases where there's a lot more education that needs to be done, and so really align with the goals of the consortium and the other companies that are in the space of promoting the education, getting more understanding. At the end of the day, everything we do is around how do you deliver more value to the end user and to the customer.
Absolutely. So RJ, so to me, there's a chicken and egg aspect. You couldn't have a value stream management consortium until there was a certain amount of maturity within the general DevOps market, right? Because you just can't it just doesn't work. You needed that maturity, that base in order to put this on. So I'm going to assume that you agree that we've reached that level where this now is obviously a worthwhile, sensible thing to do. What is success here? I mean, we get what the game's to further the, value stream management science. We're going to do some surveys, some analysis, some research. We're going to, try to define best practices, whatever. But what is success for ServiceNow for you? What does success from this consortium look like?
I would say that from the perspective of getting the knowledge out there at the end of the day of what we're trying to accomplish with value streams, and I would say certainly while we started out with a number of companies, vendors that are promoting the consortium, we do want customers to start engaging in this. And we have lots of conversations with customers where the conversations take the shape of they're trying to understand how to go from project orientation into working more like a product organization. So you may have heard this whole notion of project to product, right? And at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is trying to establish value streams where they're trying to reorganize the groups rather than that traditional silos in the enterprise. They're really trying to reconfigure to have value streams, again, designed to produce value for whatever the domain may be, whether it's an invoice to cash kind of a process or it's on the front end, with the end users. And so for us, success really is that our customers really understand how value streams are supposed to work. And we start seeing more of the business and technology teams working together. And I feel that with DevOps, I think we've done a good job inside of technology, right? With automation and all the different practices where technology teams have been able to evolve their practice, whether it's plan, build, run. But the area that still remains a challenge is the front end, the business. And how do we pull the business in as well? And so I see value stream as an avenue to do that. And so to me, success really would be that we do have these integrated teams. So when we engage with customers, they do have teams that are organized as value streams that are able to then perform the necessary work.
I agree. Good stuff. RJ, what about? I mean, and one of the things I've done in my past life, right? I've been a member of a few consortiums or organizations of vendors that similar sort of aims, not in value stream, but open source security, stuff like that. I think one of the difficulties is, putting the apples in the basket, right? Yes, you got to you're committed now to the success of this organization. But this organization alone won't make ServiceNow's efforts and value streams successful, right? So where does one let off and the other begin, kind of thing, right? Where's that border? Is everything you do good for the consortium, right?
Yeah. So listen, I mean, I think there is a little bit of a balance here in terms of as a vendor, right? We have our products and services that we want to offer to our customers, but at the same time, the consortium it's a little bit of a Switzerland, right? In the sense, when we walk in through the door, we leave a little bit of that vendor aspect behind us. And listen, I mean, I think this has been true in the DevOps space for many, many years, right? And I've had the pleasure of working with Gene Kim, and I was at Electric Cloud when we founded the DevOps Enterprise Summit Conference, which has been fairly successful. And so I've had some experience in how you sort of kind of balance those two aspects. But at the same point, I would say that there are benefits that the VSMC derives, which is our customers. We can bring our customers to engage with something like this, as well as some of the other companies that are part of the consortium. Really building some critical mass is something we believe that we can help with.
Agreed. I'm going to ask you what's probably going to be the hardest question of this interview. I asked it of a few of the other consortium members that we've interviewed. A lot of confusion out there about what exactly value stream management is. We talk about mapping and platforms and tools and process and so forth. give us RJ's definition of what is value stream management.
So very simply, it's the end-to-end process that stitches together the entire flow of value right from ideation all the way through deployment and usage by the end users, where they're deriving value from the system.
Okay, so that was a very scientific that was the shortest one we've gotten so far by a lot. So good for you, RJ. You nailed it. Let's leave Value Stream Consortium behind for just a second while I have you on, right? What's new and exciting at ServiceNow?
So listen, I mean, if we learned anything from last year, or the market learned, which is digital transformation is here. It's critical for business continuity, for companies to thrive, and I think we saw a lot of success stories last year where companies were able to pivot their models given the new reality we're in. And so for ServiceNow, it's really continuing to help our customers with that digital transformation and really accelerating it. And so our focus remains in that front. And we really believe that what's happening right now with digital transformation, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we're fortunate enough to be right bang in the center of it.
Absolutely. We've seen we've seen plenty of numbers now that suggest that in the last year we saw perhaps somewhere between 4 and 7 years worth of digital transformation acceleration take place. So and there's no reason to believe that. I mean, we're certainly not going to go backwards. People aren't going to say, okay, let's roll back the digital. The question is, can you maintain that pace? And that's hard, right? I think we're seeing it even here at MediaOps, and we're a small organization, which is, can you sustain that pace of transformation, that pace of change over, an extended period of time beyond a year? And I know ServiceNow is one of these tools that are allowing people to do that. But what do you think, RJ? Do you think we continue at this pace, or does it return to a more, not that we go backwards, but more of a normal sort of process, progression?
Yeah, I would say we're in the early innings in the sense, if you look at the number of workflows that exist in the enterprise, right? And how many of them are truly automated? Could you just simply walk away from the office and be able to, keep functioning? There's a lot of work to be done there. So truly believe that there's a lot of headroom. And also, if you think of other capabilities that we're bringing online. So as you know, so we acquired a company, Element AI, earlier this year. And so really, it's all about, how can you then start applying things like machine learning and new capabilities to continue to streamline the experience and process. And, the one thing that I always think about is, customers are never satisfied, right? And the bar keeps getting higher and higher in terms of how we can deliver to their expectations. And so from that perspective, there's always going to be a there that we're driving toward.
Absolutely, man. RJ, I don't know, is there anything else we missed covering that you want to hit on?
No, I think we covered the main points here, Alan. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Before we go there, I want to mention that people who are interested in finding out more about the Value Stream Management Consortium can go to vsmconsortium.org. You can find out all about it there. It's just getting started. As Helen Beal, the chairperson or chair of the consortium, mentioned on her earlier interview, this was really a kind of an MVP that you rolled out, and there's going to be a lot more coming on. So we'll be watching and invite you back, and come back and visit us. You've been gone too long, RJ. We haven't seen you in a couple months.
Thank you. We'll do that.
All righty, my friend. Be well. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We're going to be right back. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with another guest. Bye-bye.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we've got the next in the series of the Haunted Hacker podcast. This is part 3 of 3. David Lee is the guest of Mike Jones. David Lee is AKA DC CyberSec. They have their conversation about cybersecurity, infrastructure, and all that good stuff. So let's give it a listen.
Yeah, ambition is fantastic. The way that I get around, well, I shouldn't say get around, but the way that I prove candidates is create a vulnerable lab, right? So I have like a virtual network with vulnerable images hosted on that network and give them a half a day to exploit whatever they can, write the report, and then present the report in a, an obtainable manner where I can consume it as like a C-level. To me, that's most important, right? So I don't look at, can you match a CVE to an exploit? I want to see how you look at the network, how creative you are, the way you address that network, and how you communicate the issues afterwards, like post work. Show me what you know, show me how you got through, and let's talk about it. Let's be creative. Let's address the issues. I don't think a lot of companies do that. They look for certifications and say, okay, great. Now we're going to have you shadow another group of people while they're actually working, and you're not going to do anything but shadow and just watch. And to me, that's a complete waste of talent, right?
That happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's test these people, get them with a senior tester, get them out on a job, and get them involved, because that's what people need. They need real shit to get involved with. OSCP is great, Vuln Hub's great, Rapid7 and their tool, Nexpose and Vuln Hub and all this stuff is fantastic. But unless you give these people a chance to actually put their knowledge to test, all that's for nothing. I've spent probably a good part of 20 years building my reputation and just showing people that, hey, I can do beginner and I can do advanced cryptography. What do you need? Show me what your needs are. I know what I can do. What are your needs? And I know a lot of people new in the industry probably don't have that level of, let's go to task. But it's important to know that occurs behind the scenes. Will is fairly new into our world. So Will, what questions do you have for David as far as, what you do now, as opposed to, what he's done and what his background is? You're mute. All right, hold on.
I'll just go. He had another question earlier about SOC analyst versus pen testing.
Yeah.
They are fairly different roles to each other, but they do encompass bits of each other's jobs as well. So someone who's defending an environment in a SOC analyst role should probably know a little bit about how to attack it as well, because they sort of go hand in hand. But at the same time, a pen tester needs to know how someone's going to defend an environment to be able to look for those vulnerabilities. So they're fairly similar in that respect, but the day-to-day job is quite different.
Way different. So SOC analysts, when you sit behind, let's say Darktrace at the most advanced level, can get very monotonous sitting there watching alerts or things pop up on the screen that really make no sense or haven't been truly correlated. And even with some of the new tools coming out, right? The buzzwords, AI, machine learning, a lot of it's nonsense. and the CISOs are expecting this like AI level analysis when the tool actually doesn't do true AI. So the analysts are left to compensate for the lack of trust with the tool and what's been advertised as what the tool can actually do, and the production of an actual report to a client that shows that AI. And that's where my pain comes from, this whole AI, ML buzzword.
Is it going to take over the industry? That's probably question number 2 on the list of questions I get.
Yeah, absolutely. And the answer to that question I usually give is the concern shouldn't be, should it take over the industry, rather than will the bad guys get a copy of this AI Bayes algorithm in their inbox and learn how to create their own malware based on Bayes algorithm and prediction of behavior analysis? If so, you're fucked, because your analyst can't protect against the very low level MS blaster that's been around for 20 years. So, I mean, it goes back to how far you want to really get involved and how much of a difference you truly want to make, right? So you have companies out there trying to make a quick buck. They're getting into cybersecurity. It's a great fucking industry for making money. But to be effective at it, it takes knowledge. It takes people with experience. It takes a tool that not only has the buzzwords, but can produce on those buzzwords. Don't tell me you're AI and then pass up an exploit on port 8080 of PowerShell. It doesn't fly.
Yeah.
So totally.
That's true.
So Ghost, coming from our background, we have a unique background. Put your earpiece in. So what would your questions be to David as far as where we come from and where the industry's going, and what SOCs are trying to do, et cetera, et cetera?
One of the things that I really wanted to touch base on was the whole dialogue concerning the issue of the certification. Because this is something that I struggled with in the past. I was one of the lucky ones who ended up being hired by an ISP in Dallas without a certification that will probably never happen again. I want to know if the industry is beginning to, or if the industry will begin to give people like Mike and myself an opportunity to have that kind of entry level position without showing or proving that we're really good test takers. You know what I mean? Now this is a question that I had been forming for a long time, because I have been doing what I was doing for 11 years, and the chief federal forensics investigator for the public defender's office had been doing what he was doing for 11 years. And when we came together, it showed that we were not on the same page. We did not have the same understanding or experience. So I really want to know, do you think that is there an opening door for people like Mike and myself who might be able to find those types of opportunities without certs?
Yes, but it depends on where you are. So for places that I've worked, like in Australia or Singapore, even China, I've done a bit of work there. China is very much based on certification and being able to take that test.
Singapore is not, though. Singapore is very open.
Exactly. Yeah, they will take anyone from anywhere. And if you can show the skill, they'll take you. Yep. Whereas somewhere like China or even Australia, Australia is somewhere in between, where it depends more on who you know rather than what certifications you have. Because there's a saying here, it's like mates for mates.
I guess.
So, yeah.
So
I would imagine that there is a level of burden of proof, because how would someone like Michael or myself be able to demonstrate, that we would be a good fit for the company without, having to show that we're good test takers? So I wonder if we'll ever create like a base of something that would allow us to show some type of proof.
So Singapore,
I don't know.
Singapore is very interesting, Ghost. So when I went to Singapore the first time, I was working for the Ministry of Defense. Same thing with Egypt. And really, they wanted to know.
When was that? Because I worked there as well.
Really? Which one, Egypt or Singapore?
Singapore.
Okay, so Singapore, I've been on and off with them since 2010. I went and trained their Ministry of Defense on voice over IP hacking and interception in 2010.
Shit. Okay. I did some stuff there in 2018.
Yeah. So I've been
17. Yeah.
I've been there off and on. I usually stay at the Marriott down near the harbor, and then take a trip over to the ship to see the laser lights at night or whatever. But yeah, Singapore has a really unique way of it's a very cool community, because the expat community from the US is very strong.
Oh yeah.
And going over there and meeting with the Ministry of Defense, they were very open to learning how to do what I did. Very open to listening, didn't care about credentials. They saw the need. And once I started doing the demos and they saw that, hey, this guy can actually like intercept some shit, we should probably listen to him. It takes a bit of proving yourself to those countries before they'll open up.
Yeah, which I think is what Ghost was talking about. There is still going to be a level of proof that you need to give, depending on where it is, if it's skill or experience or certification. Yeah. There will always be a proof thing, because they want to know who they're bringing in.
Who they're dealing with, yeah. And with Singapore, it's a little different, right? So because of the environment, they don't necessarily go off of certifications. They go off of who you know, who's bringing you in, who's presenting the business card, because there's even a certain way you present your business card to the people in charge, right? Sure. So Singapore is run by China, 99%. It's a Chinese country. So if you go in, you show them the respect, you present your business card both hands, and you sit back and you do what you know how to do, that respect is there. But they will see through bullshit really quick.
Oh, yeah.
So my suggestion is to any pen testers trying to gain a foothold in Singapore, maybe not. Maybe look at Japan, some other places before you go, running into Singapore trying to get attention, because Singapore they'll put you through the gauntlet. And that's what I like to call it, as a gauntlet. They want to see what you can do, how you do it, and they want full explanation, because when I was brought in, they want to learn how to hack voice over IP so they could monitor their citizens, right? Because back then, they didn't have control over voice over IP. It was big, but they lost the ability to gain that access.
They do now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I spent a good amount of time sitting with them and showing them, how to intercept voice over IP, how to defeat ACLs, how to defeat 802.1x.
Their surveillance in the international airport as well is out of control. It's amazing. It's scarily good.
Their airport, what's it called? Changi Airport.
Yeah, Changi.
Changi Airport is like by far the most archaic when it comes to bathrooms, because there's just a hole in the floor. But when it comes to tech, is way above. Like, you could go to any U.S. airport, and Changi has more security controls than any U.S. airport. But a hole in the floor for a bathroom.
Yeah, squat toilets is definitely a thing in that part of the world. But
for sure. But they're
takes a bit of getting used to.
Yeah. I think I've been going there off and on since 2010. And I spent most of my time in Chinatown, as well as some of the other boroughs, but mostly with the Ministry of Defense and some of the encryption companies, showing them how we get past voice over IP vulnerability. But it takes that gaining, respect and trust from those countries in order to function within their borders. One thing I had going for me was I was not a big fan of the U.S. And it's pretty public. They made it pretty public that I was a cyber terrorist. So going to these other countries, they were more than willing to welcome me in and say, hey, look, this is our country. Teach us what you know. We'll take care of you. We'll do what we can. Yep. So I trained Cyprus, the banking system in Cyprus. I trained Singapore, some other countries. And it's all independent, right? So my suggestion to anybody getting into pen testing, don't vow your loyalty based on one company or one country. Everybody is independently, I guess, hired, and we're all consultants. If you think a company's going to stand by you and be loyal for 50 years, newsflash, not going to happen. So we're all independently employed, and we all have to make our own living. So pick which countries you want to go to. Pen testing is huge around the globe. Like, I'm working with some people on the yachting industry, the super yachts. To get onto a super yacht would be badass, right? Spend 2 weeks on a yacht testing shit.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
It's a dream, right? I've been all over the world. I've been to Europe. I've been to Asia. The possibilities are limitless if you take, and it all goes back to passion. If you don't have passion for what you do, you're doing it for a paycheck, you're gonna fail. Find your niche, find your passion, exploit it, dig it, research it, live it, breathe it, eat it. And eventually you'll come to a point where you're giving talks in front of large audiences, you're doing Skype interviews, TV interviews. It'll all come to fruition, but it's all about people, how you treat those people, how you bring those people with you, and how you build your own little business empire. It has to be orchestrated. And David, tell us about how you developed your business model and how you function.
I went off basically the people who were asking me if I had talent to refer to them, or asking me for contracts. So I was in a position where I was doing a lot of contracts. They were between 3 to 6 months long, and I was doing them through larger companies in Australia and anywhere else. And I essentially took that, created my own company with a couple of other guys, and that's sort of how I took it on. And when they said, do you know anyone? I said, yeah, I know myself. I can do it through my own company. And they're like, oh, at the start, it was a bit hard. Definitely. There was quite a few months there where proving credibility of that company and showing them that there was a real structure in place, the right sort of insurances, all that fun business stuff in place, and then getting those contracts off the back of that. I had to start pretty small. There was a lot of useless networking meetings that I went to, talking with smaller, like 1 to 2 man type web SEO businesses or something like that, who were pretty much outsourcing. You just have to explain what their own vulnerabilities are and how to govern their own data. And that's sort of how I started with that, and then moved on to doing those bigger contracts. So like what I'm doing now with different other government organizations, doing their security needs, not so much like a full SOC team, but we do have like a virtual SOC that we've got available if they want to use it, as well as like managed service agents that we can push out to computers and all that standard stuff. But most of the work I'm doing is like a project-based work where they need a pen test, or they need a red team op, or they need some investigation done into a disgruntled employee, which that's probably the most common actually, all the way to training. Like phishing scam training, sit down the whole company in 5 different sessions or something, and let's talk about phishing and how I'm going to get your information. And show them like a real example of exactly how someone would get their information and what they can do with it.
So with phishing, do you use like commercial platforms like PhishMe, or do you use like, set like social engineering toolkit?
There is a toolkit. It's basically Go Fish with a bunch of custom scripts built in to look for a couple of extra little things that I know are pretty predominant in Australian market anyway.
Yeah.
So it's essentially just like that.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, there's tons of platforms out there, and there's tons of ways to market yourself for a pen testing company. But I think what really, the bottom line, especially during a pandemic, is gaining that trusted advisor role. And sometimes that takes, proposing this huge pen testing scope and actually only producing 10% of it just to gain that trust to move on to the next level. And I've done that with a few UK companies. Right now, my portfolio with the UK is pretty big. But it all started from, ad hoc little, tasks here and there. Hey, talk to our Intel group, give them some advice or consultation or whatever. But, it all goes back to learning not only offensive, but defensive, and keeping up with the industry, keeping up with the news, new techniques. I mean, this industry does not slow down.
It only accelerates, really. And that's where AI or automation will come into play.
Yeah.
It's sort of built in a way to automate, not so much take someone's job. Although there is automations that can take people's jobs, it's usually the more menial tasks that are automated out by AI.
So which brings up a great point. We brought on Vonahai, which is an automated pen testing platform, I guess a couple weeks ago. And they take care of the automation of the scanning and the vulnerability identification, which is paramount.
That's a big piece of it. Yeah.
Huge. And then not only that, but the reporting. Reporting to me, if you can take over my reporting, I can dump my shit into a template and be done. That's golden. That takes out a week of my time.
Hell yeah.
And a lot of people, a lot of pen testers are fearful of the word automation because they automatically think that, you're trying to do away with pen testers. No, we'll always need pen testers to look at and to give sanity checks to the tools, as well as manually verify results. It's not something we're going to fire and forget. But throughout history of pen testing, before pen testing was even a real industry, before there were CEHs, a small group of us were doing somewhat true pen tests. And we didn't have all the automation. We didn't have the templates to drop, data into and screenshots and make it a streamlined process to where a report over, a huge net block won't take us 1 week. We were doing reports that were lasting 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So the industry as a whole has come a long way. But I think the real division that we're going to see from here on out is the people who come from school with CEHs and diluting the industry with nonsense. How many of those people are going to be left standing operating the tools? How many of those people are going to be left in the industry with, not so technical jobs? And I think I have a huge fear that that's going to be a lot.
I reckon so. I'd agree with you.
I wouldn't trust a DoD network with someone who has CEH. And with the U.S. right now, the qualifications to become a DoD contractor in cybersecurity requires two things: a CEH, the ability to get a clearance on a secret level, which is only fingerprinting and no felony charges. And I want to say they require one other certification, whether it be Security Plus or whatever. So when you look at that requirement as opposed to the level of threat against a country like the U.S., that is so subpar. We're going to put those people on the front lines of APT attacks. So incidents like SolarWinds, you might as well leave the window open because SolarWinds is going to become Solar Hurricane. It's not going to slow down.
That's it.
So
in here it's more like Security Plus and OSCP now. But getting a clearance, with a history, you can still get a clearance. Depends what level of clearance you need, but I mean, we're all convicts anyway. So, they're not too caught up on that, depending on what it is, of course. Yeah. But I mean, if you wanted to work in the police, I can't remember what they're called now, but if you have some sort of felony around cyber espionage and you want to get into their SOC team, probably not going to happen.
That's a shame too, because those guys with that cyber espionage background,
they're probably the ones you really want. Yeah.
they're the gold mine, right? So
exactly.
If you can maintain control of them and their behavior and maintain, what expectations are involved with that operation, dude, those are huge assets. But when you burn those assets and say, look, we don't want you because you have a background, guess who they're going to go to? They're going to go to cybercrime. And do you really want a CEH defending your network against somebody who is a former black hat who knows how to get past that? Probably not. So why not spend the extra, spend the extra money, gain that trust, find a way to formulate a legal contract that will bind them to all sorts of shit so they behave in a certain way. But those are the people you want. You don't want somebody...
You can as an external contract. Like if you were to work for yourself, or if I had a background in espionage or something, I think that would probably work in my favor now. But I don't. I've always been on the true blue good side of things. But if I did have a history, it'd probably work better for me, to be honest. Because people would be like, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he got caught, which is not great, but he's obviously got the skill.
Right. And that to me is a more lucrative side of business. But the more important side to me is being able to give back, right? So I've been able to take my history and put that aside and jump in with kids who are going in the wrong direction and help them straighten their path and do the right thing. Yeah. And then I've jumped on companies as a board member trying to advise them to look at this direction as opposed to hiring these people. Let's look at bringing in real talent and proven talent. It's a bigger risk, but the payoff is much larger as opposed to bringing in somebody from a security plus background. Sure. And I think that's the task that we run globally. I mean, I've spoken with the guy from Catch Me If You Can. What the hell is that guy's name? Frank something or other. I spoke with him.
Abagnale.
Yes, Abagnale. I spoke with him twice during the Future of Cybersecurity Europe conferences. And he's been with the agency 44 years, does great things for the FBI, helps them in creating algorithms. I mean, fantastic, right? So if you can find hackers that are that willing to work with law enforcement, government, it's a gold mine. But the problem with the U.S. is when you turn your back against the U.S., they're done. They've made me a complete zero. I was locked in the UK for 2 years. No way to get back. But what was funny is the UK and European governments were willing to listen to what I had to say and willing to put me to work to help them secure their networks and to help their kids. The US, there's no room for that. They just want to put you in prison and forget that you exist.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, the prison system over there is a money-making system as well. So there is that to it as well.
Yeah, it's a private system. System. Yeah.
I know in Australia, ASIO does recruitment through Twitter a lot for black hats. It's like one of their target markets for new recruits is all these black hats. And that's kind of cool, I guess. Or even people who maybe consider themselves or don't know if they're black, grey or white or purple or whatever,
right?
They sort of point towards those sort of people who have an interest and maybe don't want to follow the rules so much, because that point of view is pretty vital, especially in this industry.
Right. And it takes that member who doesn't want to go by the rules to figure out how to break those rules. You bring somebody from college or from, a boot camp and say, hey, look, we've got this technology, a SCADA system. How do you want to go about hacking it?
That's it. And the only reason I know those sort of things is because of experience. But if I was to jump into it again, when I first started, I was in that line, right? I knew how to do things and how to get it done, but it was more of a test in a college exam, which is perfectly fine for me. But for someone who's thinking outside of the box, they would have done so much better.
Oh yeah. And patience too, right? So usually with pen tests, we're given 2 weeks, 1 week for testing, 1 week for reporting. And I have to explain to them in the report, hey, look, this is what we found, but this is a very small window. Given the amount of patience and the value of the target, that time frame may change, and the amount of work put into it may change as well. Just depends on the target. So we had a couple other questions. How important is it for your security people to be able to speak the language of CISO and CTOs, the key decision makers in organizations? So the way we break down teams, we have a red team lead who organizes and orchestrates. They're basically like the composer of the red team. They make sure everything works on a time schedule. Maintenance windows, sign-offs from law enforcement, et cetera. That's great. But then after the testing, we usually have one person who's really good at speaking the data to a CISO, to an executive level, so they can digest it. And then we have...
That's where I come in, usually.
Yes.
That's my job.
And someone who can speak to IT as well, to communicate that and get that work in motion. But really what's most important is David's role speaking to CISOs and CTOs. I was that CISO and I was that CTO. And I can tell you that when someone comes to me with a 50-page pen test report, the first 2 pages are for me. The rest, I just throw in the trash. But what it really takes is someone like David to break down the executive level, the C-level communication.
Yes, you really have to articulate exactly what the main points are very quickly, and make it so that it has some sort of risk behind it and how that affects compliance. It's all part of the fun of GRC. But yeah, being able to articulate yourself properly and say exactly what's wrong and getting the point across is pretty important, I think.
Super important, as well as not only speaking to the C levels, but also putting things in a digestive format to where they can call back on you if they have questions. I've seen companies walk in and do pen tests and leave a report and it be completely above the CISO's level. And the CISO looks at me and says, hey, do you know what this means? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. But did you not talk to the company who came in? But a lot of companies, they drop the report, grab their paycheck, and that's it. They're done.
Yep.
So if you really want to succeed in this industry as a pen tester, go the extra mile. Make yourself available. Not only during the pen test, but afterwards. If a company has a question about, hey, we just got an email, or hey, we're seeing this malware. Have you seen anything about it? Do an hour's worth of intelligence work and figure out what the fuck they're talking about and get back to them and give them some kind of guidance, man. Don't leave them out there, because that's what our industry really lacks, is people who want to put in the effort after they get the paycheck.
That's it. And instead of just having a report, like an audit report there, 50 million pages, whatever, put it at the beginning, the action plan. Yes. Right at the start, you say, this is what's wrong. This is what we can do to get you over the line. Yep. And they'll appreciate, they won't read the rest. They're not going to read it anyway.
Yeah. So, it's all cannon fodder, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just rubbish. Well, it's not right. Like, it's very important, but they're not going to read it, is my point.
They know that there's 100 machines out there that are being accessed through Telnet. They're not stupid. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily want to know that their baby's ugly, but that's our job. And once we tell them it's a matter of, hey, your baby's really ugly, but we can help you make that baby a lot better looking if you buy these clothes for it. And we can help you do that. But other than that, man, like the pandemic has really changed our industry as a whole. I know for me, it's really changed what I do. A lot more remote pen tests, less vulnerability assessments, zero face-to-face conferences. It's all virtual conferences and speaking engagements and whatnot. And I work in like 10 different time zones, so it's really exhausting. So what do you experience, David, as far as post-pandemic and running your business and what you've experienced on your side?
It's changed from mostly for me in protecting one building as an environment to lots of little nodes as the entire environment. So imagine it as this is what you were protecting before, and then this is what you're protecting now. You still have to do the middle bit, which is where everyone's connecting into, but you also have to protect that traffic going in and out from wherever people are. And without control of their router or some sort of firewall that they have, it can be quite tricky. So it's a lot more endpoint protection and a lot less just that site environment protection.
Yeah, so I've been called into certain like groups to talk about working from home and the mix of technology. And I think the biggest concern right now is you have teenage kids, you have, the mother, the kids are involved that have this mixed technology, cell phones, gaming systems, Alexa, Google, Chromecast, all that stuff within a network. While a company is still trying to maintain their operational status in that same network, competing with those other pieces of infrastructure for bandwidth and security. So you're mixing all kinds of new vulnerabilities with what used to be a pretty stringent environment with your corporate environment, and now it's like the Wild West.
A good example of that is the governments here, especially the local governments, like council level governments, they didn't supply their remote staff with computers or devices to use.
Wow.
I know. So people are jumping on their kids' computers or their home laptop or whatever, or having to go out and buy another one. And that is a massive problem in itself. That's like a security disaster just waiting to explode. So there's a lot of that going on. And that was like pretty much every council in Australia. I don't know how many councils there are, but there's lots.
Yeah,
there's lots of users connecting in on those environments. So it's
for sure
it's just a disaster.
For sure. Most of the talks I get involved in the past couple months has been working from home. And people are like concerned about, well, I'm on VPN, so I should be secure. And I'm like, yeah, you would be secure had you not had your son's Xbox on the same network and your daughter's cell phone on Snapchat and Instagram and, the Wi-Fi without a password. All that would be great if you were only worrying about that VPN connection. But and my prediction last year, like middle of lockdown in the UK, was we're going to see a lot more attacks against VPN infrastructure, ICS environments, and stuff like that. And so far, 100%. VPN has been like the big target to find vulnerabilities. And if you can infiltrate a VPN connection, you own the company and the employee. So, organized crime is all about it. Nation states, all about it. We're going to find vulnerabilities.
It's also a lot easier to, you don't have to crack a VPN. You can phish someone much easier, especially when they're working from home, because they'll take that phone call.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
Absolutely. And with services like Spoof Card, right? So you can spoof your phone number and call in and say, hey, look, we're the FBI. There's been some kind of issue on your network. You're going to have to open up this port. Let me take, control of this or whatever. And the second they see FBI on caller ID, guess what? They're giving me control.
Oh, yeah.
And it's happening all over the world. I've seen it in multiple places. And what's sad is that they're hitting the people that have probably the most money and probably the most vulnerable, the older people, and just taking full advantage. And, there's nobody they can turn to because there's no public service announcements. There's no announcements from the UK or from the US saying, hey, look, this is what we're seeing on a cyber level. please look out for this specific stuff. And here's the list, and here's how it's worded. Here's what the emails look like. I have not yet seen one announcement from the government saying, hey, look out for this activity. Nothing. It's always, we're entering into a new uncharted territory, and cybersecurity is a big deal, and we just got hacked through SolarWinds, but stand by. What does that tell the people? The people are like, oh, we're all fucked, and guess what? you let them in, so we're just going to wait for you to like close the door.
Dear. Yeah,
it's bad. And I hate to spread like all the doom and gloom, but I'm always called upon when it comes to doing like these like predictions for the next year on where
doom and gloom is what keeps us employed.
Microsoft is what keeps me employed.
And Microsoft environments in Australia, like Azure and 365 over here, is I'd say at least 90% of organizations' infrastructure.
For sure.
At least 90%.
And then they took SolarWinds and tried to say, oh, well, we were the ones primarily targeted for SolarWinds. No, you're just like the most prolific technology that happens to be global.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna target your shit, but guess what? We don't really care about your stuff. We care about threat intel. We care about DOJ. We care about government agencies. We care about infrastructure. We don't care about Microsoft. Fuck Microsoft. Microsoft's been around forever. You're just a conduit and a taxi cab for our attacks. That's the way it's always been. So with that being said, any more questions for David? David, if you have any questions for me or for the community, fire away. I wanted to take this time before we get off of here to thank you for taking your time out of your schedule to jump online with us. I know I owe you a hoodie. I've been super swamped.
Yeah. We'll do a swap. I'll give you a DC Cybersecurity and I'll take a Haunted Hacker one.
How about this? You bring me on your show and I'll get you a coffee cup and a hoodie.
Shit. Okay. Deal. You got a deal.
Cool.
All right, next up, Jen Grant, CEO of Appify, in our Something Old segment from the Predict 2021 conference, talks about a software not living up to its cloud-enabled promise. Lots of great talking points in this conversation or in this presentation, so let's give it a listen.
Hi, I'm Jen Grant, CEO of Appify. So why did some businesses survive, even thrive, during the pandemic in 2020, but some didn't? There's a reason behind it all. And what I predict in 2021 is rooted in how companies will need to become more agile and how they can do it. And that agility will be the deciding factor on which companies succeed and which don't. So to get there, let's start by looking at a successful pivot from 2020. So Giles was a new CEO of a healthcare company, and they were on a mission to deliver in-home diagnostic testing in countries across the world. And when the pandemic hit, things changed. They were lucky. They had an exciting breakthrough. They discovered a rapid, affordable, and accurate COVID-19 test, and they realized as fast as possible they had to launch their in-home diagnostic testing for this COVID-19 test. But in order to do that, they had to have the technology behind it. And so that was their struggle. And in fact, the government even said they wanted a demo, a live demo in 3 weeks. And so Giles had to figure out, how does he launch this end-to-end experience of delivering a COVID-19 test in someone's home, as well as tracking the test, the lab technicians, the doctors, everyone, in just 3 weeks. So happily, he did. So in 3 weeks, he was able to demo this live version of how someone would see the test collector come to their house. They would get their tests. The data would be collected. The lab supervisors would do all of the work that was necessary to run the test through the system. The doctors would get the results. And even better, 4 weeks later, hundreds of tests were running through the system. But how did he get to this fully formed end-to-end technology solution in so quickly? We all know that most businesses struggle to move quickly. We struggle to shift to a new business model or go after an opportunity fast enough. And during this pandemic, it's very clear that this kind of speed is a critical component of whether a business will survive or fail. But even in easier business climates, even in normal business climates, when companies move too slowly, they leave themselves open to serious risks. So the competition could get to market and they miss out on a first mover advantage. Or one of their competitors could start offering a new service to customers, and customers could be so happy about it that they start leaving you. Or your employees get irritated and frustrated that they don't have the tools they need to get their job done effectively. So imagine if you were agile enough to quickly get to market, to quickly change your customer's experience, and very quickly give your employees the tools they need to be efficient. So for the last decade or so, we've talked about digital transformation. Does it work? Does it not work? Who did it right? Who did it wrong? So my prediction is a different way to think about digital transformation, not the digital transformation with 3-month deployments and huge software, but this is the kind of digital transformation that Giles went through to give his company the agility to capture a new opportunity. So I've been in the industry a long time, 20 years or more. And back in the day, back in the 90s, I was implementing Oracle software. I was a consultant implementing sales commission software. And I would go on site. I would understand deeply how they paid sales commission. And then I would make sure that Oracle's system would spit out the correct commission to their sales reps at the end of the day. But I think we all know that these huge technology stacks are very rigid. We often build software specifically for one way of doing things. And that was the case with Oracle Sales Commission. And so I distinctly remember walking away from a particular customer that I had helped, and we were going to pay those reps correctly, and thinking to myself, they will never be able to change the way they are paying sales commissions today. If they want to pay for a different product, if they want to pay 2 reps instead of 1, anything more complex than just a tiny increase in the number, they would need a consultant to undo the hacky system I put together to make it work. And of course, this isn't just the 90s. I was recently talking to a VP of service operations from a Fortune 500 company who shared with me that they were in the middle of a 3-year deployment of Microsoft Dynamics 360, which is an impressive piece of software. But it's not that impressive if it takes 3 years to deploy. And he said to me, he admitted, after admitting they were 6 months cases, we see what, many of us know, that these monolithic technology deployments are too rigid to deliver the agility and speed that we need to stay ahead of the competition and to adjust when there are changes to major market conditions. Of course, but wasn't SaaS going to change all of this? I guess so. I was at Box in 2011, and we believed that the cloud was going to change everything, an entirely different approach. You could pick the best cloud solutions for all of the different parts of your business, and you could integrate them easily, and best practices would be built in. So everyone would get the innovation they need in real time and the software they need. That's what we believed. But years later, we've seen SaaS apps explode in enterprises. Over 1,000, an average of over 1,000 SaaS apps are in large enterprises. And I saw this same issue that large monolithic companies had experienced. Suddenly, in order to deploy a SaaS app, it was taking months or even years. And the reason is we've tried to force businesses into the best practice that we determined was the right way to do it. And all of a sudden, these SaaS apps, what's happening to them is the same thing that happened to the old ERP solutions before them. Customization. SaaS apps like Salesforce start to look a lot like their predecessors. They're rigid, they're slow. You need developers to get them to work properly for your business. And that's when it hit me. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. Every business is unique. And forcing best practices in our software is actually slowing us down. So let me say that again. Forcing best practices on these businesses is slowing them down. And if there's anything we've learned from this pandemic, it's that we must be faster to adapt, and we must be ready to change for all of the unpredictable things that are happening. Because only the agile companies are going to survive. So let's take a look at a couple of these agile companies. There's this great brewery in New Mexico called Bow and Arrow Brewery. And so the pandemic hit. Now this is the mission of this company is to connect people in their brewery. So that's a big change for them. And they quickly pivoted. And instead of opening a second tap room, they canned their beer and they started distributing it. And suddenly they're distributing their special beer to hundreds of stores across the state. So here we have what could have been a dire issue for a business becomes a huge opportunity for them to expand. Spotify, another great example. At the beginning of the pandemic, marketers pulled back on their spend. So suddenly one of their big revenue drivers, advertising, was drying up. So what did they do? They launched a new product. They launched podcasts. And in the first month they launched podcasts, 150,000 podcasts were running. And they started signing exclusive deals with celebrities. Huge win for them. And of course, there's Giles, who in just 3 weeks was able to demo an end-to-end technology experience that would deliver COVID-19 testing to the doors of consumers. So what are each of these businesses doing differently? So I think Shyla Shepherd, who's the CEO of Bow and Arrow Brewery, said it best. It's about accelerated decision-making and leveraging technology. Accelerated decision-making and leveraging technology. Well, okay. So now we look at our 3-year, even 3-month deployments. They cannot support the agility that our businesses need, whether it's a pandemic, where it's an immediate shift, or a new opportunity, and you want to get to the market faster than your competition does. To go faster we need to deliver tools to our teams faster. Let me say that again. To go faster, we need to deliver tools to our teams faster. And I know there's some that are thinking, oh, great, I'm going to hire hundreds of developers who will be constantly at the ready to build whatever apps I need to support whatever new product or new service offering or change that we need to make. But for most companies, that's not an option. We're not graduating as many computer science majors as we used to. We don't have as many developers that we can hire and leave at the ready. So that's where some of the new technology advancements come in, particularly no-code platforms. No-code platforms allow a business to have a platform that is effectively developers at the ready. When they need a new app to make a process less manual, to be more efficient, they can create one days, maybe even hours. When the market changes and they need to do something different, they need to launch a new product or attack a new market, they have technology ready to build whatever they need. So what was Giles' special sauce? Giles' special sauce was this no-code platform, choosing to invest in an enterprise-grade no-code platform that could deliver apps for each part of the testing experience. So he had an app for his consumers to schedule their tests. He had an app for sample collectors to use as they collected information from the customer, as they collected the sample from the customer. They had an app for the lab to track the tests coming in, to track the process, to ensure accuracy, to be transparent, and to make sure everything worked properly. And an app for the doctors to take a look at all the information and to sign off and say, yes, this is correct. All of that technology, because of a platform approach, could be delivered within weeks. And now he can add a new product line. He can easily adjust the experience. If there's a button someone is confused by, he can change it overnight. And he can quickly capture opportunities that he hasn't even thought of yet. And of course, for some companies, it could be even simpler, just getting rid of the manual processes that their employees are going through, whatever paper process they might have, whatever difficult to use technology, if they have to upload data or send through email or they're sending Excel, all of those things can be automated by a no-code platform. And of course, you have your developers at the ready for whatever comes your way, whatever unpredictable market happens. So in 2020, we were forced to discover what digital transformation was really about. It's not about 3-year deployments of technology. It's not about rigid architectures. It's not even about 3-month deployments. It's about agility. It's about adaptability. It's about outfitting your business with technology that helps you quickly adjust to unpredictable change or new opportunity. To go faster, we need to deliver tools to our teams faster. So 2020 was the year that kicked us in the gut. Let's let 2021 be the year we bounce back and we become the agile businesses we all want to be. Thank you so much.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? RecruitOps is the new way to source engineering talent. From MediaOps, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here with the Thursday edition of the headlines. First up on DevOps.com, we have a great article that discusses the 5 steps to successful DevOps culture. Mark Hornbeek, who knows his DevOps, takes a deeper look at the impact culture has had on DevOps implementations, noting culture challenges are the number one obstacle that many organizations need to overcome to succeed with DevOps. Transforming organizational culture for success with DevOps requires a strategy, goals, and sustained commitment. Mark looks at the 5 practical steps for cultural change that are also highly applicable to DevOps culture transformation. This article is a must-read for any organization struggling with adopting DevOps from a culture perspective, including organizational inertia and deep-rooted habits. And we take another look at the rise of citizen developers in the new no-code world. It's no secret that organizations are taking a long, hard look at low-code and no-code technologies to help them in their digital transformation efforts and streamline their workflow processes. It could be said we have entered the no-code era, as more citizen developers are stepping up to help fill the gap that so many organizations are experiencing when it comes to person power. As this article reminds us, no-code solutions empower employees to take the reins on their own workflow processes and gives IT teams more time to focus on critical issues related to infrastructure, security, and, ultimately, business continuity. I see more movement in the no-code, low-code space as citizen developers prove their mettle, and I expect to continue hearing more about players entering the fray as time goes on. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that approaching problems from a different angle is the best way to find the answer. No-code, low-code proves that. In news, the Linux Foundation has embraced the SigStore project to make it easier for developers to employ cryptographic software to secure software supply chains. There's a lot of S's there. SigStore was founded by Red Hat, Google, and Purdue University and uses transparency log technologies to create a lightweight mechanism for signing software artifacts, such as release files, container images, and binaries, in a way that creates an immutable, tamper-proof log. Because the log created is immutable, everyone participating in the software development process, including auditors, can now transparently track chain of custody for any software artifact. At its core, SigStore creates a set of short-lived ephemeral keys with a trust root based on an auditable public log. This news comes at a time when the focus on software supply chain security has increased in the wake of a spate of high-profile breaches. And as organizations embrace DevSecOps best practices, the entire software supply chain will come under greater scrutiny. Ultimately, the issue will come down to finding a way to secure those supply chains, either from the top down by deploying and maintaining a platform, or simply making it easier for developers to better secure artifacts from the bottom up. All right, over on Container Journal, Bill Dorfeld has a fun article, well, maybe not for the companies involved, on how not to use Kubernetes, 5 failure stories. This post is called from a community-driven project called K8s.af. Hopefully you all know what AF stands for, which is a rich collection of Kubernetes failure stories that provide a comprehensive view of Kubernetes anti-patterns and helpful knowledge on how not to use Kubernetes. They are written by engineers and implementers and describe many unfortunate situations, such as CPU limits that cause high latency, IP ceilings that prevent auto-scaling, missing application logs, killed pods, 502 errors, slow deployments, production outages, and so many more. Hopefully, by analyzing these failure stories, others can learn how to better configure and improve their Kubernetes environments. Totally worth reading, if not only to make yourself feel a little bit better about your Kubernetes acumen. In less amusing yet very relevant news, Tigera is making available a preview of open source Calico virtual networking and security software for running Windows in the Microsoft Azure Kubernetes service. The goal is to make it easier for IT teams to apply consistent networking and security policies across both Windows and Linux servers hosting Kubernetes clusters on the Microsoft Azure cloud. As the number of Windows servers running containerized applications inevitably increases, more IT teams will look to standardize on a common set of policies for both Microsoft and Linux platforms. In anticipation of that shift, Tigera last year made its implementation of Calico for Windows available as open source software. Earlier this year, Tigera launched a software as a service platform based on Calico for monitoring and securing Kubernetes environments. All right, over on Security Boulevard, Frank Olhorst takes a look at what most enterprises get wrong about ZTNA. Zero Trust Network access has proved critical for securing remote workers who were forced out of the office due to quarantines and the other realities presented by the COVID-19 worldwide. However, there are still a lot of misconceptions about what ZTNA is and what it does exactly for the enterprise. Frank argues that dispelling those misconceptions is imperative, considering that ZTNA is well on its way to becoming a critical enterprise technology. He goes on to list the four most prevalent misconceptions and explains why they are just wrong. Differentiating fact from fiction around ZTNA will prove to be critical for IT pros as remote work and work from home policies are just becoming the norm. And finally, we ask the question, is cybersecurity more difficult than going to Mars? Arguably, yes. While technology is helping to bring humanity's dream of populating the red planet to fruition, the effects of digital transformation have spurred several cybersecurity concerns for our current and increasingly interconnected world. These concerns are so pressing that one could suggest that achieving cybersecurity is actually more difficult than sending humans to Mars. Of course, Earthlings have not yet set foot on Mars, but we've also not mastered cybersecurity. And although NASA recently landed Perseverance on the planet, and Elon Musk has high hopes humans will land on Mars by 2026, I'm really not sure we'll have cracked the cybersecurity nut by then. This article discusses some of the more pressing cybersecurity issues we continue to grapple with and what we need to do to make this the era of new space opportunity, not data breach dominance. All right, that's it for headlines today. Please check back with me on Monday when I'll have a new batch for you. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Please stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon and I'm here now with Matthew Groves, who is the Senior Product Marketing Manager over at Couchbase. Hey Matt, how are you? Great to see you.
Hey Charlene, thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here on TechStrong TV.
All right, well, thank you so much. We are here to discuss a recent study that Couchbase did measuring digital transformation and how developers are revolutionizing digital transformation efforts amid the COVID-19 crisis. So hopefully you're here to talk to me about that as well. and we'll hopefully we can just kind of talk about the study itself and some of the findings that you guys found. So first of all, maybe you can kind of tell me why you guys decided to do this study and how this came about.
Yeah, so this is actually a survey of tech leads in various organizations, and we've been doing the survey for a number of years. This is actually the fourth year of this survey. We started back in 2017, and this was conducted in September 2020. So it definitely covers most of 2020 and the experiences that have been brought on this year. But we can also compare it to previous year's results to get some insights about the impact of 2020's events have had on organizations.
And what was the most important finding from the study?
I think the key finding of the study is that this is a survey of tech leads and how they see their developers, and it was really important. I think that developers are kind of the heroes of the various success stories this year in terms of digital efforts and online efforts and programming projects and all those sorts of things. And this survey really just kind of highlights that about developers.
Okay. All right. So were there any findings in this year's survey that really surprised you, maybe especially in light of what's been happening with the COVID-19 pandemic and so many organizations now working remotely?
Yeah. So I think probably one of the most surprising things, and there are a few, but one of the most surprising things is that our survey shows that development teams have actually grown by an average of 20% in 2020. It's been a tough year for a lot of organizations, but development teams have still actually continued to grow. So this is an important investment for a lot of companies and a lot of teams.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Digital transformation kind of took a front seat, or even assumed the driving position for a lot of organizations over the last year, and because from all the conversations I've had with organizations, they've recognized that they've needed to do digital transformation for a while. But in light of the pandemic, it became an imperative for them just to stay afloat, is to make sure that their companies are basically keeping up with their competitors in terms of agility and just being able to pivot on a dime, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's something we can take away from this as well, is that a lot of these efforts have just kind of been pushed to the front of the line as becoming more important. And you mentioned agility and flexibility. Those are things that if a business can help their developers, if teams can help their developers achieve that, whether it's through technology or training or just prioritization, it's going to be easier to get your company going in the right direction. And, it's a very tough year, very challenging world now. And I think this survey just shows that developers have a very important role to play in their organizations, perhaps more important than previously, we were aware of.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I mean, I really love the just the fact that developers are really kind of, their profile has been raised dramatically during this, this crisis that we've been dealing with. And I hope that it remains that way. But at the same time, I kind of feel like because they are so important to all of this, that they're going to be a lot more susceptible to burnout and to other, issues that plague, the old saying, it's not easy being king. So, are developers actually kind of starting to burn out a little bit more often than maybe we've seen previously? And, is that something that hopefully, is a temporary situation, if you will?
Yeah. So one of the results from the survey points out that that's one of the top complaints, really, is that they're being asked to do too much in too little time. And it's kind of always been the case, right? But I think it's especially important to point out from this survey. And some of the other complaints involve, they don't have the skills to, or they don't have enough training to perform the tasks they've been given. They don't have the technology they need or that they want to perform the types of finished kind of projects that they've been scheduled to work on. So hopefully, this is something we'd like to bring to the attention of the public through TechStrong TV and other publishing a report to just say, hey, maybe this is something you should talk to your developers about. Are they looking for something that's more agile or more flexible, or some technology is going to help them accomplish more without putting any more stress on their already very thin amount of time.
Yeah. And I would like to think that, as part of these digital transformation efforts, that organizations are taking a good long look at their current tooling and, their tool chains and seeing, areas where they can improve and maybe get the right technologies in to help developers out. So do you think that we're going to see more organizations maybe as part of their efforts to kind of keep their developers happy, maybe switch to an environment that is either like a hybrid work environment, or they just decided that they're going to keep developers working from home full time, just because that's been, proven in a lot of organizations that they can be just as effective working from home, and frankly, a lot of folks really like it. So, are we going to see this shift to a permanent work from home set up for developers?
That's a tough thing to predict. Depends a lot on other external events we don't have much control over. Mm-hmm. But one thing that this survey does point out when we asked about scheduling is that despite all the changes going on this year, despite having too much to do in too little time, many of the projects report that they are on schedule or believe that they're on schedule despite all these challenges. And that just kind of points to, again, the developers being able to step up and adapt to those new situations with everything else going on in their lives and in the world, still able to keep their projects on schedule or ahead of schedule. And that's just, again, points to the great impact the developers have had on their companies and their projects.
All right. Well, are there any other survey findings that really kind of surprised you guys, especially, maybe certain things that you thought would have changed because of the pandemic that really didn't seem to be impacted by the pandemic and the work from home?
Yeah, I think those two are kind of the big ones. Is that they're still on schedule for the most part. Not everyone is, of course, but there's lots of people that are on schedule or ahead of schedule or being able to deal with this. And, at Couchbase where I work is that we've able to switch to a fully remote environment relatively quickly with low impact. Now, I've been working at home myself for a long time, over a decade. So I'm kind of used to it. But a lot of the company, was based out of our headquarters in Santa Clara, and they had to pretty much go remote on a dime. And I've been really impressed by our ability to do that, especially the developers and all the technical teams able to adapt to that very quickly. So that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing in the results of this survey, and just firsthand at Couchbase.
All right, great. Well, I think 2021 is definitely going to be a year in which we see positive changes emerge from what we learned from the pandemic last year, and currently in the way organizations work and approach work with their employees and with their business overall. So, Matt, thank you so much for walking me through these the findings and really illuminating ways in which developers have kind of emerged as the heroes of the pandemic 2020, I guess, if you will. So, but thank you again. I do appreciate your time and your efforts.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Gordon Lawson, who is the president of Rangeforce. Hey, Gordon, how are you? Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
Great. I'd like to talk with you about an organization that your company is very much involved in, which is helping the minority community in their efforts to become maybe more tech savvy, or just in integrating and including to the tech community at large. It's an organization called Black Girls Hack, and I think that is a very, very worthwhile organization to be involved in. So can you tell me a little bit about how you guys got involved in it and what you see the organization actually doing for the community?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was introduced through a mutual friend to Tanisha, who's the CEO of BGH. She's just an incredible person, has an amazing resume. She's Ivy League educated, has worked for multiple large organizations, defense organizations, and she's really kind of a stalwart certainly in the Virginia, DC area in terms of being able to recruit people and be a role model for the cybersecurity community. Her organization has several hundred young girls, young ladies who want to get into not only coding, but also more particularly into cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And I think she's really just served as a great mentor. And so when this introduction was made through a mutual friend, we just wanted to reach out and do whatever we could to support her mission to broaden the community and bring more people who might not know that this is really a world of almost endless employment opportunities. And so we were really honored to partner with her.
That's great. So what are you guys doing as an organization to help BGH?
Right. So at Rangeforce, what we do is we have a 100% cloud-based online training platform. Okay. There's about 500 modules where folks can get very hands-on in things like SOC analysis, threat hunting, OWASP top 10, cloud security, secure coding. And so that platform is there and that's available. And what we've done with BGH is we've said, any of your members, and I think there's several hundred now that they have, and it's growing quite quickly, can have complimentary access to Rangeforce. We're going to help them design some curriculum so that it's a very guided learning path, whether someone's maybe has no exposure to cybersecurity or they're maybe a little bit further along in their career. We have something within that content catalog that anyone can benefit from. And so that's really our goal, is to make sure that they have access to really great content and that they're not having to go pay thousands of dollars to try and get a certification. We want it to be easily accessible. And then we're going to give badges for people that complete learning paths within our platform. Young ladies can include that in their resume. They can post on LinkedIn, and the idea is to help them get a job if they're searching, or maybe they're going to taking their career to the next level if they're already in an entry level position. So I think that's really powerful and helpful.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I know that this started actually in the DC area. Has it become kind of more of a national organization, kind of helping folks across the country? Are you guys involved in that on a greater level beyond the DC area?
Well, I know BGH is really more of a DC organization. It is expanding. I know Tanisha has plans to expand out, certainly more nationally. We also work with ICMCP, the International Consortium for Minorities in Cybersecurity, which is a national organization with thousands of members. That was actually how I got introduced to BGH to start. So one of the board members there introduced us. But there's several of these organizations. There's Blacks in Cybersecurity is also about the same size as BGH, maybe a little bit larger. They're also based in the DC area, and they're doing some incredible work, making sure that people just really know what an amazing career field this is. And then there's a couple other organizations that we've also worked with in the past. One is called Year Up. This is a group that gives 100% scholarship-based training to not only minorities but also veterans. And I love this story. One of my good friends runs a security operations center for a major company. And he says that he will recruit from organizations like Europe any day over most universities, just because of the training that's provided there. And so I think it's just important for folks to know, sometimes it's hard to get access to a traditional university education. Mm-hmm. There are alternative routes out there where you can learn these skills and really do wonders for your career.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, not to toot our own horn, but we've actually just, our company has recently started fully funding 2 scholarships for minorities to attend our local coding academy here. It's called Boca Code. And so we do 2 scholarships a year that we fully fund. And it's called Engineering the Future or something like that, the scholarship. So I think it's a great thing. And obviously we do need to do anything we can to promote inclusion, diversity and inclusion in cybersecurity and in IT in general, because we are missing on so many opportunities for greatness when we overlook certain categories of people who are so qualified and so smart, so intelligent, and so can bring so much to the industry as a whole. So I applaud your company for being involved in BGH and other organizations. And I certainly hope that you guys find greater success in that. And I hope other organizations and other companies take your lead. It's good stuff.
I appreciate it. And I think, one thing kind of to leave you with here is this is a profession that requires a diversity of thought and a diversity of problem-solving skills. We really have some pretty strong adversaries around the world, as we know from recent news. There's lots of openings, and I think as a country, we have to get the best talent with different viewpoints and really bring them into this community to be able to keep really our nation and the world more secure. And so that's it really is a very noble cause to help those individuals, but there's also a great piece here where we're helping companies and organizations to become more secure, and that benefits all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Gordon, thank you so much for walking me through what you guys are doing with BGH. And it's a great, great organization. And I applaud your efforts. And I'm actually going to reach out to Tanisha and see if I can get her on TechStrong TV also to talk about her organization and hopefully others like it. So thank you again for joining me, Gordon. I really do appreciate it. And
thank you, Charlene.
I wish you continued success.
We appreciate it. Take care. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Thursday edition of the Webinars Preview. As I always tell you, we have a number of great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard, but I wanted to let you know about 3 that are happening in the next few days in the hopes that you can mark your calendar and join us. The first one is called Kubernetes Security. Don't get attached to your attachment. It is happening Monday, March 15th at 9 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It is sponsored by Armo. We all know that there are different attachment methods to secure Kubernetes. You can use APIs or agentless, host agent, or application level agent. This webinar shows that each attachment has its benefits and its drawbacks, and we'll take a look at each of the different options and hopefully shed some light on the best way for your organization. It's an interesting webinar, definitely worth checking out. The second one is called Managing Security in a Decentralized World. This one is also happening Monday, March 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. This is a panel discussion that I will be moderating with Mike Rago of CloudKnock Security and Rob McDonald of Micro Focus. We're going to be taking a look at identity and access management, including what the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has meant for identity and access management adoption. And we'll also discuss some of the trends around IAM. We will also talk about what's happening in the space as IoT, single sign-on, and biometrics, those other types of new technologies move deeper into the IT space, which are definitely having an impact on identity and access management. So I am really looking forward to this conversation. I hope you'll join me for it. The final webinar I want to let you know about today is called Best Practices for Modern DevOps Architectures and Operations. This one is also happening Monday, March 15th at 2 p.m. Singapore time zone or 11 a.m. Australian Eastern time zone. For those of you in the United States, that is 10 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and that means I got a long webinar day ahead of me on Monday, March 15th. This one is sponsored by Circle CI and AWS. High-performing teams, as we all know, they need the best tools to automate software development, scale quickly, and get to market faster with confidence in their code. So this webinar will show attendees how to utilize Circle CI and AWS to automate mission-critical tools and architectures to achieve DevOps maturity. They will also demonstrate how to use Circle CI and AWS to implement continuous integration and deployment of modern DevOps practices. Good stuff. All right, guys, that's it for today's webinar's preview. I will be back on Monday with a brand spanking new batch for you. Until then, please have a great day. Whatever you do, stay safe. All right, next up in Mitch Ashley's Analyst Corner, he talks to Glenn Weinstein, who is the Chief Customer Officer of Twilio, and they discuss the results of Twilio's second annual State of Customer Engagement report. Illuminates a lot of things that came around because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, this was actually researched and initiated at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it illuminates the great work that developers have done to kind of keep business running throughout the pandemic. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, it's a great pleasure of being joined today by Glenn Weinstein, who is Chief Customer Officer with Twilio. Glenn, great to be talking with you today.
Hi, Mitch. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, good. I'm so excited that we're talking. I know you've released in February, end of the month, you released your second annual customer engagement report. Before we get to that, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about Twilio.
Of course. Well, I'm Glenn Weinstein. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Twilio, and it's ultimately my job to help our customers be successful with the products and the services that Twilio offers. So Twilio is a technology company. We deliver customer engagement solutions. We're very popular in the software developer community, very ubiquitous globally. We have over 200,000 customers. They're using Twilio to communicate with their customers and create better engagement through things like SMS, sending emails, communicating over voice, whether it's the telephone or over internet or other software channels. And Twilio is also very commonly used by other software companies to build in those features into their products. So Twilio is really sitting at the center globally of how businesses are communicating with their customers.
Yeah, talk about a perfect time for in a disruptive time, in the times we wish we didn't have for other reasons, but certainly well positioned. I'm sure you have an interesting year. So, well, tell us about the report. So you've done this once before. Now you're doing the second one. So obviously, if you had to pick an interesting time to do sort of a A/B comparison, yes, what a time to do it. Just tell us a little bit about what kind of things you're wanting to learn. You were asking participants who were filling out the survey, what kind of things you wanted to know and maybe what some of the findings were.
Yeah, well, we did our first annual State of Customer Engagement report last year. And to be clear, we commissioned a third party to do the survey. We don't want the respondents to know that it's Twilio. But they surveyed over 2,500 organizations of 500 people or greater, and people in director level or above positions. So a fairly good global cross-section of leaders of reasonably large-sized organizations. And the questions are all around digital engagement, digital communications, and what's changing and what's trending in their organizations around how they communicate with customers. The initial report was motivated by the pandemic. It was taken right after COVID-19 hit us around March or April of last year. And we had a theory at Twilio We had our own anecdotal evidence that we had actually seen some increases in communications traffic over our platform, which caught us a little bit by surprise. If you think back to the very early days of the pandemic, the general feeling was businesses are just going to shut down, period. The economies of the world are in deep trouble. And it was our surprise to see increased communications traffic. So we commissioned that first survey to say, is this just something Twilio is seeing, or is there something greater happening here? Are organizations responding to the pandemic in ways that are non-intuitive? Are they actually communicating more?
Mm-hmm. It kind of went from we're going to be in lockdown for a week or two to, oh no, it's kind of nuclear winter. Everything is stark across the winter landscape here. But truly, there were some areas that really flourished, and it sounds like you were at a place where you could start to see where some of the things that are happening. So tell us, what did you see? What did you learn from the survey?
Well, in that first survey, we saw that, generally speaking, communications were at a premium, and customers were increasing the use of communications channels. Think about the way you used to pick up a food order at a restaurant. You call the restaurant, you place your order, you go in and pick it up. Very quickly, the restaurant industry, the quick serve food industry, had to come up with a contactless model to handle all that over text messaging and emails and other ways to communicate with customers. So that writ large across industries was really the story of the first survey. The second state of customer engagement survey, which we commissioned and completed last month, told us somewhat sort of like a follow-on, a sequel to that story, which is to say, okay, we get it. Communications increased, channels increased last year to respond to the rapid need for contactless transactions and alternate business models. What the second survey showed us is that as we recover from the pandemic, business leaders don't expect that to change. They don't expect to roll back those digital communications improvements, and consumers don't want them to. We basically defined a new normal where even as you now could go into the restaurant, to use that example, and pick up your food in person, you still want the ability to do the whole transaction over text. Multiply that again across industries, across the medical industry, across education, and so forth. And the survey really clearly shows that we want to hold on to the gains that we got, even as we move back into more of a face-to-face business model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. It's let's react and adjust and respond quickly to conditions that have changed very suddenly, certainly beyond our control.
Yeah.
But once you change a pattern, oftentimes that pattern sticks. The new pattern sticks, right? And especially when let's face it, in fact, it's more convenient, right, to do curbside pickup, to do delivery of goods and services. And plus, I think now we're thinking we're going to be living with the virus for a while, right? Even with vaccinations and everything and variants and all that, we don't know. It isn't going to be back to, COVID's done and gone, right? It'll be in some smaller state, but we're still going to be wanting to do some of these things, and maybe we'll have to deal with future situations like this. I don't know that motivates it, but it sounds just like customers now have a new behavior that they want us to perform, and they're behaving differently too.
Well, the first survey showed that respondents said they'd accelerated their digital communications roadmaps by an average of 6 years. Mm-hmm. So if you take that and compound that effect, what we've essentially done is we've allowed our IT teams, our technologists, our software developers to rapidly accelerate their pace of innovation. Now that's great, but now that's unleashed a really attractive new ways actually of doing business that are really solid, that work in any era, to be able to communicate with brands and people that are providing you services through the channels that you prefer, whether you prefer an SMS text message or you prefer an online chat. You maybe prefer to communicate over WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or Apple Business Chat. Businesses increasingly are under pressure to support you in the channel that you want. And so it really, I honestly, I hope the pandemic effects go away quicker than you said. But even whenever we do return to whatever we consider to be the new normal, you would never, I think this survey really shows that there really is no reason to expect that we will give up these digital gains. And in fact, I would go further and to say that the pandemic forced IT leaders and business leaders in general to really rapidly figure out ways around traditional obstacles like budgets, like prioritization. Think about the typical IT prioritization process in a big company. It takes time, it takes years, really. All of a sudden, it had to be done in days or weeks. Now it's unleashed the power of software developers. We've seen what software developers can do under the gun and rapid pressure to deliver a result really fast. That genie's out of the bottle, and I don't think we are going to go back, nor do we want to go back. The world and organizations have seen what empowered software developers can do, and we want more and more and more. I think really, ultimately, it's increased the strategic value of having software development capabilities.
That's really borne out in some of the research and work that I do in this area too, Glenn. I meet with groups of CIOs about twice a week, and in some ways, the business has been wondering, can we count on the IT? Can we count on the software teams if we're really going to make that central to our transformation, digital strategies? We want to, but that hasn't historically been that level of kind of strategic bets that we're making through those organizations. Not that they don't believe they could, but we just haven't seen it yet. In a way, this is kind of a proving out year that we have seen it. We can count on it. It's their level of capability has actually grown too. We've sort of unleashed the horses, and they're running not just free, but really well, down a path, down a strategy that we're happy about. Now, how do we really get even more innovation, more gains, more benefit to customers, to the business? Seems like that's the stage that we're at. That's what I'm hearing.
I think you're right, Mitch. I mean, really, this sounds crazy to say, but it's in a way we're lucky that the pandemic happened when it did, in an era where we have such ubiquitous availability to web APIs that can do really powerful things. So the software supply chain is a lot richer today than even 10 years ago. The ability to put together these digital communications and digital engagement workflows without requiring any hardware investment. There's no time to do a hardware investment in April of 2020, in the wake of this incredible lockdown. So, in a sense, it's a good thing it happened now. Also allowed us to do work from home. But here's the thing: the leaders of the organizations that responded to the survey, they said what you just intuited, which is, we think we can count on software developers moving forward. They actually said that in no uncertain terms. 87% of the survey respondents said digital engagement will be very or critically important to our success moving forward. It's hard to get 87% of leaders to agree on anything. And they agreed,
about 30% would be good on most topics, right?
Right? 95% said they'll maintain or increase investment in customer engagement as they come out of the pandemic. So once you grab a hold of that budget, that ability to prioritize, business leaders are telling us through these survey results, they plan to hold that and to wield that power moving forward.
Is your sense that once you make this transformation, you make this bet in digital economy, digital interactions, not that we won't have in-person or have retail locations or whatever, but there's kind of a no going back too. I mean, because now you've delivered these capabilities digitally, customers start to expect it. The next place is where you have to innovate, right? You can't just mimic what we did in person. You're creating new ways of interacting with customers, new ways of delivering, so new kinds of services for that matter.
You're exactly right. I think about some of our financial services customers that are innovating around the financial advisor workflow. Traditionally, a very in-person sort of a business transaction. You go meet with your financial advisor, your personal finance planner, and you work on a plan. Now, if you can't meet with your advisor, you need to rapidly come up with ways of doing that virtually, doing that through digital communications. And many of our customers did exactly that. But if you're going to portray your financial advisor workflow through an app or through a series of digital communications, you've got to find a way to differentiate that a little bit. I don't want to name names. So it's the financial services provider A doesn't think they're the same as B, and they have to show that differentiation now, not just through the brilliance of their advisors who, can do that in an in-person meeting, but it has to be reflected in a differentiated experience through their app and through their communications channels. It's a great challenge that we all saw our providers meeting throughout 2020. Another area that they're going to have to hold on to. So this whole idea of if you buy off the shelf, you can't differentiate from firm A to firm B if they both bought the same product off the shelf. It really kind of has awakened business leaders in a much broader sense to this notion that building your own software is a competitive advantage. It's not just about the way you define your services. It's about the software that implements those services.
You hear the phrase of, we're not an airline, we're a software company. We're not a manufacturer, we're a software company. Well, of course, they're a manufacturer or an airline. What they're saying is our competitive ability to compete, more or less a competitive edge, is our ability to deliver, not just build, but deliver software and the right software at the right time to help us in the market, help our customers.
Yes, and survey respondents, when asked specifically about investment in software developers, in this ability to build, not buy, in the general move from on-premise to cloud-based solutions, which tend to unlock these custom-built transactions, in overwhelming numbers, told the surveyors that they intend to continue those investments. Very pointed at this idea of investing in software developers. Now, some of this survey, about a third of survey respondents said that they would continue to invest in on-premise or invest in packaged solutions, but boy, that's a much smaller number than we've seen historically, and a much bigger number said they will continue to invest in what we call programmable platforms, programmable solutions, where you can customize to a much greater degree than you can with a completely packaged software.
I don't know if survey went into this, but did you kind of see the range of sort of low code, no code to building, containerized cloud apps? Did that fit in the continuum of people that were responding to the survey?
We didn't ask specific questions about no code, low code, high code kind of environment, but in a way, a proxy for that is, are you using packaged applications? Are you using a programmable platform, which I think implies a mix of those approaches? And then are you just building your own software, which might arguably be kind of a high code environment? If you really look at the state of web services today, and Twilio, my company, as an example, as an API provider, there are many others. This is more of a general industry trend. The APIs that are available in the software supply chain today are so much more sophisticated than even a few years ago. You can be a low-code developer and string together, like to use the Twilio example, use Twilio Studio to string together business workflows. And you don't have to write in email, you don't need to write the SMTP code in telecommunications. We handle all of the nitty-gritty background communications protocols. You just connect endpoints and data flows. It's much more ubiquitous. So in the survey where you see programmable, that's what I think of as your no-code, low-code approach.
Makes a lot of sense. So I'd love to hear the Twilio part of the story. So a situation like the last year happens, you have to be in the right place, the right product, right time, business goes up, you're supplying a lot of capabilities to the market. Then there's also a phase where you look at, so what do we do next, right? We don't want to just become that. Customers are going to continue to move and change, and they're where they are and what their needs are. How has the last year kind of changed things for Twilio and where you're headed?
Well, one of the themes that came from the survey, and in a sense we took action on, is personalization at scale. So the idea is that in the past, only the largest brands could truly afford to invest in personalization at scale, to make sense of all of this massive river of data and start to customize offerings and customize the transactional approach to different customers and different channels. And I'm talking not really about targeted ads. I'm talking more about using that personalization so that we go back a century or two to the days when the shopkeeper knew your preferences because it's Mitch. Hey, Mitch, how are the kids? How's the wife? You want your usual order? Sure, here it is. It's that kind of service that you can provide in a one-to-one experience that brands of all sizes and shapes want to deliver today, a personalized service. That is a clear theme from the survey, and it's also something Twilio is working hard towards. We made a fairly significant acquisition at the end of 2020, a software company called Segment, which provides a customer data platform, or CDP. And our vision is to connect Segment's CDP with Twilio's river of transactional data. Every time you exchange an SMS message, maybe whether you send or receive an SMS, or you carry a minute of voice to a customer, or you communicate with them in some other channel, you're gaining information about your interaction with that customer. Traditionally with Twilio, it's been up to the software developer to figure out what to do with all that data. We want to make it a little easier to just pipe that data directly into personas defined in Segment, so that you can use Twilio and use the communications that Twilio offers and start to personalize your experience for different customers. That, to me, is a clear trend, and brands that can differentiate on personalized experience will have a real differentiator moving forward.
It's on a key point that I really resonate with, is when it isn't about the layout of the store or the experience when you walk into an environment, or the direct person to person, which you may still have in a digital economy, you may not. It still comes down to the experience. I mean, we don't think about an app as an experience or an online web page as an experience, but customers think about that. They think about, now it's kind of easier to go from person or company A to company B if that experience isn't great. It isn't hopping in the car and not, how do I find one? It's search. Okay, let me go try this one, right? So you really, in a way, it kind of creates even a more hyper-competitive environment where you can both stand out, but also potentially lose if you're not really on your game.
I think you're right. I think the web and work from home and contactless transactions have been, in a sense, levelers of the market. Prices and delivery methodology are sort of becoming equivalent. So it's going back to an age when you differentiate on service. You're exactly right. And I think once prices become generally competitive across the board, it's the only thing left to generate true customer loyalty. We probably both feel that as consumers, that we are willing to go to brands that we think know us better. It's why people want to live in towns where they know the shopkeepers. And, it's sort of, that's my positive hope, my optimistic hope for the future, is that all of this technology allows us to get back to personalized relationships. There's more life than just targeting better ads. And I hope we can use the technology better.
Well, I don't know. This is certainly not a perfect analogy, but I think about the music industry when it went digital, right? Sort of the record buying experience and that relationship with the customer really changed. It changed for the artists in some ways, very threatening, but it also created an opportunity for artists to get the middle person, the middle companies out of the way and start to build relationships with their audiences, developing audiences, go direct almost. And in some ways, that's kind of what we're experiencing now, where people can create businesses and services without having to be the super large corporation, because you can go to a Twilio, you can go to platform providers, you can get all this technology with a credit card sometimes and find the right people to help you create that experience.
I think that's a great analogy. And you're right about down market. It's not just for the largest brands anymore. This is the web revolution generally, and it's certainly true for digital communications, that these tools are available to the very smallest companies today. And they can create these personalized experiences quicker than anybody. That's a great point. One of the other trends that I think really came out of the survey very clearly is that highly regulated industries are piling into this revolution as well. You traditionally would see in let's say, a healthcare or the public sector, reluctance to embrace very modern multi-channel digital communication. But it's another very clear point that came out of the survey is that era is gone. When our cities and states and here in the US and governments around the world strongly embrace digital communications for contact tracing. And now we're seeing it for vaccination programs. We're struggling to learn all the right lessons. I'm not saying it's the smoothest rollout in the world, but you actually step back and think about the expectations we have on our public sector today and our healthcare providers. We very much expect to be able to sign up for these things over text messages, really, to get notifications, to be able to receive the latest information from our city or state. And be able to subscribe to that. So the baseline expectation has changed, even in these industries where we haven't been used to that before. When we go to the doctor or the dentist in the future, we're very much going to be expecting a SMS appointment reminder and a confirmation. And if you want to change your appointments, we expect to be able to do that without having to probably call and speak to a human. And those are expectations that are not going away.
Like telemedicine has become medicine, right? It's not tele anymore. It's just part of how we deliver it.
Well, it's another key trend in the survey, actually, Mitch, is a strong increase in the interest in embedding video in our applications, especially in telemedicine, but across distance education and other areas as well. It's one thing to use Zoom, which is a general purpose communications mechanism, but software developers want to build video right into their apps. And it's so easy today compared to 5 years ago. It's very realistic now to build in either a two-way video capability or a broadcast video into your own software without being a video streaming expert. And thank goodness for web APIs for that.
Well, if the pandemic has to happen, it fortunately or unfortunately happened at a time where we can make this transition. 5 or 10 years ago, not sure we could have done the same thing. Not even close, really.
Right, and I think the economic impact would have been more devastating had it happened even a decade ago.
So any thoughts on, a year from now when you do the survey again, where you think we might be, what you think we might see happening?
Well, the focus of this survey was, are we going to hold on to the gains that we made in digital engagement, at the start of the pandemic? So we'll have to come up with I think we're going to see that confirmed over the next course of the next year. So hopefully the next survey is issued in a time when we're widely vaccinated, we've hopefully gone back to normal, and we can start to focus on the next rounds of great innovations in digital communications and digital engagement. From Twilio's perspective, we're thinking multi-channel, we're thinking global ubiquity. A lot of what we've described is available in the United States and in some other key countries around the world, but it's not quite as global and as universal as it could be. So we're looking at greater global penetration. And I think the future may lie also in cross-channel communication. Imagine the scenario where your contact, your engagement with, let's say, Comcast Cable starts with you reporting a problem over the phone. You move seamlessly into an SMS conversation. Then they email you something, and then they tell you on SMS, hey, enable video on your phone and show the Comcast agent the problem that you're describing. This ability to very seamlessly cross communications channels. We don't see a lot of that today in practice, but as these technologies mature, that is one thing Twilio is working very hard on to enable, is this notion of the conversation that cuts across multiple channels.
Well, it's also, I think, helped that so many more of us are now comfortable with the digital tools, digital experience to start to have those, that channel transition, across in a conversation. Glenn, I wish we had another 2 hours to talk, but we don't. Love to have you back again. Really appreciate you sharing the insights from this. It's extremely interesting. And I think it answers a really burning question we all have is what happening, what I think is happening? Is this confirming what I want to find out what I don't know so I can prepare myself, my team, my company, my IT organization for the future. And this is super helpful. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Mitch. It's been a pleasure.
Great. And folks can find out more about Twilio. They can download the report at twilio.com.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fascinating read. It goes into all sorts of details, lots of numbers that will help you actually back up your assertions and get you a little momentum, hopefully, in your organization to continue building these solutions.
Sounds like a great tool for that next finance conversation or budget committee. Okay. All right, Glenn Weinstein, who's a customer experience officer with Twilio. Thank you so much, Glenn. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, securityboulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. In our final segment today, The View with Vizard. Mike Vizard talks with Barun Badwar, who is Senior Vice President for Product for Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks, and Idan Tendler, who's the co-founder of Bridge Crew, and they talk about the importance of scanning infrastructure as code. It's a great conversation. Let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Varun Badwar, Senior Vice President for Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks, and Idan Tendler, who is co-founder of Bridge Crew. They were just acquired by Palo Alto Networks, and they make an infrastructure as code tool known as Checkoff. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
Can you guys explain to me a little bit about what the fuss is about infrastructure as code lately and security? We've been doing it for a long time, but it seems like we're not doing it especially well. What's the core problem, and what do we need to think about to fix it?
I'm going to let the guy who formed the company on this answer that question first.
Thanks, Varun. So, Michael, infrastructure as code is not new. But in the last couple of years, we saw an amazing growth in adoption of infrastructure as code by DevOps engineers. And it allows them just to configure and to manage their public cloud much faster and much bigger scale. And what we also found out that DevOps engineers need now also to secure their infrastructure as code. So think about framework like Terraform or CloudFormation. They need to secure these frameworks. And when we founded the company, it was 2 years ago, we thought, hey, we need to equip DevOps engineers so they could run cloud security in scale and in code. They're used to run code. They used to have their own tool chain, their own CI/CD. We need to take the world of cloud security and to translate that into code. And this is why we founded the company. And in the last 2 years, we created a very, very cool, very, very big community of DevOps engineers working with our tools and getting value.
I feel like the number of developers using tools like yours is not as high as it should be. People are just kind of configuring things without much regard for security. It used to be in the old days on premise, somebody would kind of check the configurations to make sure they're secure. And now developers are just kind of going straight to the cloud. Does this represent progress, or do we need to rethink some of this a little bit?
I think it's we see like a huge, huge change. I believe that in a couple of years, this revolution of, we call it shift left, will be quite popular, and every organization, every team, every developer's team out there, every team that runs cloud security will need to run security in code, in infrastructure as code. We see that today. We have users from Fortune 100 companies, and we have users from small startups. It's a big wave of change. It's a big movement, actually, and we're proud to be part of that.
Varun, how does Bridge Crew fit within the larger Prisma Cloud, and what is exactly in the Prisma Cloud these days? You keep adding it to it, so walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we should probably rewind 2.5 years to the point when Redlock, the company I had founded, was acquired and kind of joined Palo Alto Networks. It was actually the first acquisition made by our new CEO, Nikesh Arora. And he comes from Google and a very cloudy background, if you will. And the conversation we had was very simple, actually. We thought it was a great opportunity, as customers were now starting to move into the cloud more seriously, to really build a comprehensive platform that has multiple security use cases handled collectively. And recognizing, though, that you cannot win unless you have best-in-class capabilities for each segment, each use case that you offer. Because otherwise, if you look at what's happened in the data center environments and traditional environments you described, it's a very fragmented security environment, dozens of point products that the customer is responsible for integrating, managing, and prioritizing. We thought, there was definitely a way to do this better for the cloud. And that's kind of where the Prisma Cloud team has been focused. We've really made 3 big bets in the last couple of years. One is, like I said, cloud will be huge, and visibility and compliance requirements will be showstoppers for moving into the cloud more rapidly and into production. So that's where the Evident and Redlock acquisitions came in to kind of address the cloud security posture management use cases. The second bet we then made was, okay, great, people are starting to lift and shift. Soon they're going to realize that they need to have more cloud native architectures. Containers and serverless capabilities are going to be critical, and they would have a distinct set of requirements for security. And so we looked at that market and we acquired 2 of the leaders, one for container security, a company called Twistlock, and a company called PureSec that was an early leader in serverless security. Again, we brought them in and very rapidly integrated them into our platform. The third bet we had made was that every organization, or at least most organizations, will have at least 2 clouds. And so multi-cloud security capabilities will be critical across users, data, infrastructure, and networking. And so one of the kind of bets we made there for networking was a acquisition of a company called Apparetto that did microsegmentation completely uniquely for cloud and cloud native environments, because microsegmentation as an industry has existed for a long time, but when you come to the cloud, things change. And really what you see here with Bridgecrew is our 4th bet, which is there's 26 million developers and 3 million security professionals. The odds are against the security teams. As Idan mentioned, there's a lot of automation happening by developers deploying hundreds of times in multiple environments, generating thousands of security alerts a day. There's not enough people to keep up. And so we have to integrate security right into the pipeline such that we provide from build time to run time, a single set of policies for developers, DevOps, and security professionals. And by doing so, we think we'll address the friction that exists in most organizations between developers and security.
So how much of the management plane is moving into the cloud? And if I have all these workloads that are on multiple clouds, plus on-premise, plus now at the edge, how do I kind of unify all that? Do I need to put different tools or agents or something on all these different platforms? Or kind of walk me through how it works essentially.
Yeah, look, we have a philosophy of going as far as we possibly can with APIs first, because to your point, these environments are very diverse. The tech stacks are diverse. Well, even if you had agents, there are a lot of services in the cloud you can't even deploy agents on. And so we take an API first approach to say, let's connect to every possible service into every possible cloud, both public and private, at least the popular clouds, and make sure that we get comprehensive visibility coverage to even help customers understand what clouds are being used in their organizations and how they're being used, how they're being configured, and how do they meet the compliance requirements they need to. That is where we go as far as we possibly can with APIs. We, again, augment that information with both a combination of rules and policies, as well as unsupervised machine learning to really try to discover those unknown and known cloud threats, right? Examples of threats are cryptojacking or stolen credentials or kind of malicious traffic moving across your networks in the cloud. So that's all kind of done with APIs without any agents. Then we actually have customers saying, well, now I know I'm running VMs in the cloud or I'm running containers and other things in the cloud. I actually want to have visibility inside of the compute instance itself. And not only do I want visibility and monitoring, I actually want enforcement and prevention capabilities. And for that, you have to be kind of on the workload, very close to the workload. And so we also have agents available to customers who want to augment to that level of prevention and enforcement capabilities. And yeah, those agents work across OpenShift in private cloud environments to AWS, Azure, GCP. And the management pane for Prisma Cloud is available as an integrated SaaS offering. So all of these acquisitions that I had described to you, plus soon Bridgecrew, will all be available through the single pane of glass that is available in kind of a SaaS form factor for our customers to consume.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Eden, let me ask you something. Is everything going to become a cloud? And if so, am I going to have these kind of infrastructure as code issues, not just up in public clouds, but out on the edge and various other environments? And is that something we need to think through?
Yeah, for sure. Keep in mind that infrastructure as code is a great method to run infrastructure at scale. So if like a couple of years ago, you needed to put tons of resources to build and to maintain and to provision your cloud infrastructure, now with Terraform, with CloudFormation, Kubernetes, and other infrastructure as code frameworks, it's just super easy. It's super easy to do that. It's just code, and it's now part of your CI/CD. And same as security. We want to shift left more and more alerts, as Varun described, to code. It's much easier to deal with alerts when it's in code, when you have thousands of alerts. Actually, now you could prevent the majority of them because you could enforce your policies, you could enforce some security checks, and you could translate that into code. We call it policy as code. And our customers, that actually use it, they see great value because they could reduce dramatically the number of alerts they need to deal with. And DevOps engineers, and these are our users, they love it because it reduces the time they need to fix issues. It reduces the amount of skills they need because the security know-how is already embedded in our fixes, in our solutions. And maybe most important, the relationship between security and DevOps is getting stronger. They are working on the same framework, on the same security issues. And this was another big goal for our company. It was to bridge the gap between security teams and developers. And technology allows us to do that.
So, Varun, let me follow up on that with you because, Eden mentioned the magic DevSecOps phrase. So what is the role of the security team as we kind of go forward here? Is if everything is shifting left, what do they do and how do we get this kind of framework going?
Yeah, look, I think, more and more security teams are really kind of there to help define policy, to help define architectures, potentially of kind of everything from monitoring, detection, response. But even if you look in the past, ultimately the responsibility for fixing issues went back to the teams that created the issues in the first place, right? Like there was tickets, the alert would go into a SOC, the SOC would then review it, investigate it, and create a ticket. The ticket would go back to the source anyway. All we're saying is in the cloud, with automation, that happens thousands of times a day, and there's just not, it's not practical for security teams to keep up with that pace of life. And so we think that these tools will allow the creator of these misconfigurations and errors to understand and identify those issues right at creation time. And studies have shown that it's 4 to 5 times cheaper and faster to fix issues in the development process than later. So we're just trying to bring efficiencies and automation into this world. We're certainly not kind of saying that security jobs go away or they're not important. It's just that everybody will be in a better place because security will define the policies and what's important to the organization, the frameworks, and the tooling will be available from players like us at Prisma Cloud that will allow those same checks to be run from the developer's laptop to the CI/CD process into runtime. And really, we're giving the same language and the same platform for everybody to communicate with. But we think the roles of security and development organizations will be equally critical, and it'll be a shared responsibility.
How automated can I make all this? Because when I talk to people, one of the issues that comes up is, they're kind of sort of aware that there's security issues around their infrastructure as code, but even when they're aware of it, they don't always go back and fix it. So I'm assuming that people are pressed for time, or they think that the next time they're going to update a workload, they'll get to it. So can I automate the remediation process, and to what level of comfort can I do that?
Look, I think I'll give a part of it, and Don, feel free to jump in. We're giving the control to the customer in the customer's hand, right? So like you can decide what you want to do with certain types of policies and issues. For example, you can say if Prisma Cloud or Bridgecrew find critical findings in kind of the build process, don't even allow the developer to proceed further to the next check, right? Or don't even allow them to check in their code into source code repository, or don't allow them to deploy it finally into production. So customers have high degree of control and granularity on the gates and how strict those gates are. Are they warnings? Are they kind of blockers? And yeah, I think one of the things we really liked about Bridgecrew that I'll have Don speak about is how they make remediation much, much easier.
Yeah, exactly. I will add to that, Michael. I mean, Varun is absolutely right. Yeah, users, they want automation, but more than anything, they want accessible solutions. And what we are doing is actually we're taking fixes, like you have misconfigurations in your public cloud. Everybody has, this is nature. We're taking misconfigurations. We're thinking about the right fixes for them. We translate the fixes to code, but we're not stopping there. For each fix, we provide context. This is why you, Mr. Developer, you should fix this misconfiguration with this code. This is the context of the misconfiguration. This is the context of the fix. This is what it will do to your environment. And actually, we're making everything very accessible. And now with just a pull request, with just a click of a button, they could fix an issue. So we empower them to time.
Okay. What will be the role of AI going forward? And either one of you can jump in here, but it seems like it's going to be applied broadly, but not quite clear how. And is there hope for us in terms of using AI to solve some of these issues? You know, look in your crystal ball and tell us what you see.
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous term that you brought up. Like you said, it's the biggest buzzword. If we had security conferences this year physically, I'm sure they'd be plastered with AI security everywhere. Look, Michael, I think if you look at security, you know, you obviously don't want to over-engineer problems. There's a whole host of issues that can be addressed by just rules and static policies. And I think we ought to start there and make sure that we get better and better at kind of improving our hygiene, improving our posture by doing so. However, as I mentioned, even in the beginning with the Prisma Cloud vision, there are absolutely kind of security issues that you just simply don't have the people to go and do things manually, trying to hunt through needles in the haystack. And so if you just look at the sheer volumes of data, I'll share some statistics with you. On Prisma Cloud today, you know, we've described we have 1,800 plus customers. We see 800 billion flow logs a day in our environment. Flow logs are network traffic environments. Now, if you think about the power of the platform, when we're seeing this across thousands of customers, we're seeing that sheer scale of information. We absolutely have kind of a whole team of data scientists that are looking at saying, what are the threats and indicators that I can surface from there? And just in the last year, you know, we've gone from initially focusing on use cases around stolen credentials and stolen keys. I'm sure, Michael, you and your audiences have heard about so many instances where developer accidentally checked in an AWS access key into a GitHub repo. Somebody got it and, you know, had access to your crown jewels. You know, that's an area that we have focused on heavily for a long time, where we can look for stolen credentials as well as malicious insider usage through unsupervised machine learning. You know, we then kind of started seeing a lot of emerging threats around crypto mining and crypto jacking as the Bitcoin prices go up, kind of crypto jacking incidents go up. And, you know, we used a combination of rules and policies, but augmented by machine learning to uncover those types of threats for our customers. And so I think there's definitely a lot of targeted use cases to look for those unknown threats where you really aren't prepared with rules and policies, where simply combing through that much data is hard, that we think are great use cases to address through machine learning. And I think as an organization, Palo Alto Networks, outside of even the cloud, has heavy investments in kind of more, especially as you look at our XDR products, as you look at our SOC automation capabilities, you know, which fall into the Cortex brand umbrella. You know, we see great promise around AI and ML there.
All right. Last question, Eden. What's your best advice to security people who are trying to navigate all stuff with developers. They're out, they're saying, they can't wait for the security guys to do reviews. We're moving too fast. Security's getting in the way. How do I kind of inject myself in this conversation where everybody doesn't hate me, but I'm actually, accomplishing the job and the mission?
Yeah, I think maybe the advice is that keep in mind that we all have the same interest and the same motivation. We want to work faster and we want to build bigger environments with less resources. So we have mutual interest. What DevOps could learn from security is definitely everything around policies and around governance, what is good and what's bad, where are the threats coming from. But the security, they need DevOps. They need DevOps engineers. They are the only ones that have the context of, what just happened in my environment. They built it, and they are the only ones that have the keys to fix the issues. So both teams need each other. And, we see our mission to bridge between these two teams. We need to translate their needs into technology, into code, and the DevOps capabilities into security.
All right. So the most important thing is not to yell at anybody. That's what I got. All right, exactly. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks,
Great
Michael.
chatting with you.
All right, guys, best of luck, and back to you guys in the studio.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's TechStrong TV. That is a wrap for Thursday, March 11th. We will be back on Monday, March 15th for another brand new episode for you. Until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Whatever you do, stay safe.